nation and the world, of course. Their unity and resolve have sparked a movement that has, well, the potential to reshape our country's future. Now, this is an achievement in its very own self, a powerful reminder that the true power lies with the people. And to the young people leading this charge, well, you have demonstrated incredible courage and resilience. Your voices have become a catalyst for change, highlighting the urgent need for reform, the possibility of a brighter tomorrow. Yet, it is also very vital to recognize the pain and loss experienced by many during these turbulent times. Families have lost loved ones and communities have suffered as well. Now, this is an unfair price for a future that we all aspire to achieve. So as we move forward, we plead here at News Central for calm and restraint. Let us channel our energies towards constructive dialogue and peaceful resolution. Violence, they say, only deepens our division and delays the progress that we seek. To the security agencies, remember that this movement is not against you, but for a Nigeria where every single citizen can thrive in peace and prosperity. And in the words of Malcolm X, you can't separate peace from freedom because no one can truly be at peace unless they have freedom. So let us work together to build a nation where freedom, justice, and peace are realities for all. May we find the strength to heal our wounds, the wisdom to bridge our differences, and the courage to build a Nigeria that serves every single citizen. Amen. And on that solemn note, my humble self, Mazino Appeal, and my capable co-host, Judith Atibi, want to welcome you to Breakfast Extra for an august weekend. Stay tuned. The dailies are up next.
Oh, yes, indeed. And it is a very good morning and welcome to Breakfast Extra again. As always, we just have what you need for an excellent start to a great weekend as we are all geared up to bring you all the biggest stories and report that you missed over the week. And of course, not to forget that today we'll be focusing on the ongoing #EndBadGovernance protest, which kick-started 2 days ago. That's the 1st of August, 2024, and it has gained momentum across Nigeria. So we'll bring you updates from our correspondent on the widespread participation of Nigerian youth and their demands for better governance. We'll then delve into these demands and explore issues like police reforms, investment in education and healthcare, youth employment, electoral reform, and the fight against corruption. And our guests will share their insights on critical topics highlighting the challenges and potential for meaningful change. And later on the show, we're going to pay tribute to the late enigmatic stallion Onyeka Onwenu and celebrating her contributions not only to music, also to film, journalism, and social justice. And in our extra hour, we're examining reports of violence in various states as well during this protest and providing analysis on the causes and implications of this unrest. But first, as always, let's bring you the dailies. And we'll start with the dailies this morning with Saturday Vanguard. We're going to pull that up on the screen for you. And for our Vanguard this morning, the very first one that comes at you. A nation divided by hardship, our hunger process exposed our growing divisions. You can find that story on page 10. Day 2, protest fire fizzling out. You can also see at the bottom there, crowds grow smaller, businesses return to normal in South. Armed forces will not watch while the nation burns. CDS warns. FCT police engage hoodlums in shootout. That's on page 5 and page 6. Now, at the very top there, ignore Igbo must go reports. Sanwo-Olu urges Lagos residents. Obi wants those behind campaign arrested and persecuted. That story is on page 8. Dangote Refinery, USA, Spain, France, South Korea, Singapore, others listed among top 10 importers. That story is on page 14. The Golden Stallion, Onyeka Uwenu, how she fell in love at 13, her big career moments, love life, and more. That story is on page 16. And that's all for the Saturday Vanguard.
Well, thank you very much, Judith. We now move on to Saturday Independent for this morning. Exposed. This is the headline that hits you. FG loses 15 billion naira annually to dirty deals of illegal charter jet operators. Aircrafts used for money laundering, drug trafficking, say stakeholders, and monitoring capacity conversions to commercial purposes beyond Nigeria, say analysts. Still, for Saturday Independent, plan to disrupt internet amidst end bad governance protests, counterproductive. Coalition warns FG. There was talk about that, if you remember from yesterday, about the fact that it's been very difficult to use the internet since the start of the protests, especially at designated places where these protests were supposed to hold. And under that, hashtag Igbo must go protest, Lagos government it distances itself from reckless, dangerous rhetoric. Obi insists governor should investigate alleged threat. At the very top for the newspaper here, Ibori at 66, Uduaga praises former governor, says he's a man of the people, crusader for women, employment, humanity. And revive moribund seaports in 6 months to please, or rather to appease peace in Niger Delta, clerics tell Tinubu. At the very bottom, Abuja relatively calm as soldiers police patrol Kashikaru-Nyanya axis. Slight tension recorded around Wuseberger axis, and still under protests, police detained 320 suspects for alleged vandalism in Kano. That's everything save one for the Saturday Independent front page.
Now we'll move away from that now. We'll move to the Nation newspaper, or rather the Weekend Trust, I beg your pardon. This one here, this is a Daily Trust Weekend Trust. Not so much going on there. It's after day 2, what next? Sultan can want immediate end to protests. Government must be sincere in addressing demands. NBA, history of mass actions in Nigeria. Inside Nigeria's unresolved murder cases. That story's at the bottom there. You can find the story on page 34. A day with Yoruba's displaced persons. And that story is on page 29. And that's all for the Weekend Trust from the stables of Daily Trust.
Up next is The Nation for a Saturday. Big headline here, military on standby to restore order. CDS warns protesters. And many riders under that one. Normalcy returns in Lagos, Abuja, Sokoto, Anambra and others. Curfew in Kaduna, Jigawa, Kefi, local governments. And Uzodinma Hill, Southeasterners for shunning violence. Abdulrazak Oyebanji 2. And end protest now can Sultan Adegberua. Others appeal. Right under that, row over murder of popular Ondo caterer. Investigation reveals face-off with lover over unpaid debt, and estranged husband, children, others demand justice. At the very top for the Nation this morning, Sanwo-Olu condemns threats to Igbos in Lagos. National Assembly's Southeast Caucus flays alleged ethnic profiling, and Sanusi to protesters don't be used to destroy Kano. That on page 3. Bayero receives peace envoy, urges dialogue. To the side there, and finally, my journey to spirituality. And finally, most finally, African Central Bank governors push for lower borrowing costs. That on page 6, if that is your fancy this morning. What next, Judith?
We have the Saturday Times coming up right next up on your screen. And you can see that at the very top there, Senator Kingebi absolves self, Labour Party from protest in FCT, says doctored viral video attempt to cause confusion. Right next to it, I have not had the luxury of kissing on set. Okay, that's from Efe Uhuha. At the bottom there, Army probes alleged poor feeding of soldiers in Yobe. Day 2 of hunger protests. Kano Jigawa demonstrators defy curfew and they throng the streets. Military malls intervening to prevent looting. Mixed reactions, trail calls to end protests as death toll rises. You can find that story on page 2 of the Saturday Times. Outrage, arrest Igbo must go campaigners in Lagos. Atiku, Obi, others tell President Tinubu. how to buy, and then at the bottom there goes how to buy affordable vehicles in Nigeria. Right next to it for their entertainment, stop killing yourself over what people think of you, and that's from Iris Star there, the superstar. At the bottom there, about diabetics patients bemoan 150% rise in cost of basic medications. Tell me about it. And that right there at the bottom, court remands a man 44 for allegedly defiling 5-year-old girl. And that's all of the headline stories there for the Saturday Times.
And quickly on to the Guardian for the weekend here. 2 days gone, 8 days more. Glimpses of national protest on pages 23, 29, and 30. There you can see the pictures from the protests from the past 2 days that, well, perhaps maybe it might have been yesterday. And Tinubu blames global economic shock for excruciating reforms in Nigeria. Well, at least he's on the pages of the papers, but yet we wait to see if he'll address the nation. The cries and call for an address has been louder and louder since yesterday. I wonder what today will bring. Hashtag August protest, time for leaders to listen. Inside stuff here for the back page if you want to check that one out. And at the top, task before Abiodun as chairman, Southern Governors Forum. And finally, Onyeka Onwenu, how the rhythm stopped at 72. Do we have more papers?
Oh, yes. Now we move now away from Nigeria. This time we're going to other parts of Africa, the continent, and we're going to, this is Kenya. Yeah, there we go. Saturday Nation. At the very top there, you can see coup attempt. De Chichinge escaped wrath of army soldiers. Stories on page 14 and 15. For the education, teachers, students, hustler fund face budget cuts on failed 2023 tax law. That story is on page 8. For the Olympics, though, Omayala bets on solid training to shrine in 100 meters at the 2024 Paris Olympic Games. That story is on page 34, 35, and 36. For politics, while Azimo leader insists on he is not in government, his actions speak otherwise. Raila new center of power, political tourism. Opposition Chief Raila Odinga has been a busy man. His recent rapprochement with President William Ruto has once again made his Capitol Hill office a beehive of activity as politicians, civil servants, and business people come calling following the new realignments in the political arena. You can find that story on page 4 of the Saturday Nation. Now, right next to it, Ahmed finally takes up health post after 5 years in acting capacity. That story is on page 3. Cabinet nominees outline ambitious plans for their dockets. And now, all eyes are now in Kenya. Just a quick of, if you recall, President William Ruto, he dissolved his cabinet following the Kenya's protests that have been happening all the way since last month and even prior. Now, there's a lot of scrutiny as President Ruto's second batch of 5 CS nominees yesterday outlined to the vetting panel their plans for their various dockets should Parliament approve their nomination. And it's very interesting to see. You can see the pictures there for the minister, for the CS nominee for roads and transportation, as well as the nominee for agriculture, nominee for ICT, nominee for environment and climate change, as well as the CS nominee for water. Well, we'll wait to see what his cabinet reforms will look like.
Oh, that was in depth.
Oh, yes, now it's Kenya now.
All right. Malawi News now. It's a very simple page. This the front page for the Malawi News. Rampant abuse at embassies, and one at the top. How government denies poor people justice on page 2. MEC gets tough on gate crashes. That's all for the Malawi News. And indeed, I believe that is as many news front pages as we can take for this morning. Wanted to go back to one, however, I think it was the Saturday Times, and you mentioned down about diabetes patients bemoaning 150% increase in price for medication. If you remember last week when we talked about the sugar tax, there was a bit of indication that some of these taxes that were taken from the sugar tax were supposed to actually go back around to patients of diabetic patients so that their medicines could be subsidized somewhere or the other. So it's very interesting that this is coming up just this week, a week after we discussed that, because that was part of the points that we took on that day. That's on the Saturday Times, by the way, a headline there under the Arya Star picture. Diabetic patients bemoan a 150% rise in cost of basic medication.
Yes, indeed. We'll move now to Saturday Punch, I beg your pardon. That's the last paper we're going to be taking for
it's
today.
back to Nigeria.
It's back to Nigeria. Well, the military threatens to intervene as police crack down on protesters, arrest 1,100. We won't watch you destroy Nigeria, CDS tells demonstrators. Opposition knocks Tinubu over killings, arrest. You can find that story and more on page 4. At the top there, 3,173 Nigerian nurses, midwives moved to UK in 1 year. That report there. You can find that story on page 5. NANS vows showdown with adversities over 80,000 naira power fee. You can find that story on page 7. At the top there, sex should not be mysterious. Wow. Anyway, that's from Nollywood actress Bukola Ikoomula. You can find that story on page 17. At the bottom there, when you go down to the bottom, things fall apart. Lagos College turns war theatre over provost tenor. That story is on page 20. For page 16, you see for entertainment there, Paul reveals fresh trouble in P Square. That story is on page 16. Perception of greener pastures abroad misleading. Nigerian-born UK Chancellor Asumu. That story is on page 28. And at the very bottom there, Lagos firm probes top executive accused of raping worker. And that's all of the stories for the Saturday Punch.
And indeed, that's all the front pages that we can take on your Saturday edition for Breakfast Extra. We hope that you guys stick around for the entire, remaining 3 hours. How many hours are we going for today?
Well, it's 4.
We've got very interesting information for you as we're adding 1 extra hour to Breakfast Extra. The extra hour of Breakfast Extra. Interesting. Stay tuned. We've got plenty coming your way for a Saturday morning. This time this morning, we are taking news strips inside of our first hour. But of course, why don't we? Because all through last week, we had so many entries for the dailies, and it was a very, very difficult pick to decide which one makes it onto our news strips for a Saturday morning. But they're all related. We're going to be addressing 2 matters here. But first, let's start with Business Day in Nigeria. From through the week, we had this very interesting piece of art/news. Hit us then. Endure bad governance. Hey, look, it's the leader by example. Well, apparently not. This is a protest against all forms of protest. Judith, I'd like to bring you in. You and I covered most of the coverage, the live coverage for the End Bad Governance protests that have been happening since 2 days ago, didn't we, Judith?
Absolutely.
And if you remember, we had these cases actually brought to our attention with people telling about the fact that while they were protesting, they also had, anti-protesters who were free to move about while they were restricted to, specific locations. You want to remind us of some of those that we had from yesterday and the day before, Judith, please?
Oh, absolutely. My pleasure. So what was very interesting about it was that as they were protesting, individuals came outside and said, you cannot protest. We're anti-you protesting ending bad governance, or we're not protesting with you. But what was the interesting thing about this was as the protesters who were protesting against those protesting.
Yeah, I know. It's a tough one.
Right, as they were doing all of that, what was very interesting was at the end of it, when journalists went there to interview them, most of them, they flipped the script. They said, look, yes, so we're anti-protesters, but the truth of the matter is that we're hungry. We collected 5,000 naira. The issues were severe. We had to do it. We didn't have any other choice. We were paid for it. But it was very interesting to see.
There was the interesting story. If you remember, Justice was with us yesterday as a guest, and he told about the story of the protesters who were actually arrested by regular civilian and then handed over to authorities for, not really doing anything. It was a very interesting take. Different experience from different parts of the country came through, especially here in Lagos and at the Ojota protest grounds at the Gani Fawemi Park, if I'm not mistaken. That's what where it's called. Now let's move on now to our next strip for today. And it's very related because, I mean, hey, it's all about the protest now, isn't it? Keep protesting, I'll be here eating, oh yum yum. This sparked off so many sentiments last week, if you remember. Judith, does that person look familiar to you?
Oh yeah, so that's my uncle from the South. That's
And
my
who
uncle from the South. That's my uncle from the South.
No.
None other than the Senate President, Senator Akpabio,
Yes,
Godswill
exactly.
Akpabio. It's
Now-
very look. Of course he is eating. I mean, look at the guy. Look at him. Look at the photograph. Look at it on the screen, and my goodness, he
So-
indeed is eating. Okay.
When the story hit social media about the fact that someone had said such, I didn't believe it. I was like wondering in what context. And then the video hit social media. And it was many people, not myself now speaking from every single opinion that I've heard, thought that it was a bit insensitive to say what he said there on that platform. It wasn't the right time, no matter what context he wanted to put it or use it as. It was definitely the most insensitive thing to have been said
Very
at such
tone
a
deaf.
gathering. What do you think?
Very tone deaf. You've put it absolutely well. Very tone deaf. And I must say this, that it begs to ask the question about empathy when it comes to the ruling class, about empathy, about how they see the persons that voted for them, and that is Nigerians, about how they see the positions that they find themselves. Because when you think about it in and of itself, for you to be in those positions of power, you must be for the people. And when the people decide to go outside to say, look, we are hungry, we cannot do this anymore, and we have to demonstrate for you to see us, that's the only way. You flip the script and say, well, be protesting, we'll be back at home eating.
Yeah. I mean, hey, insensitive, it was real. He actually did say that, but he'll argue on the grounds of context. Let's move on now to the next headline, or rather not headline, the next strip that we have for today. Now, this one's coming off of the Guardian newspaper. Of course, you know the Guardian and their air bubbles, or quote bubbles. Yeah, you plan to hold the protest. How, Governor? After rolling out the tanks, we'll roll out the area boys. After that, we'll go for the jugular. We'll roll out the bullion vans. Judith, where there were stories about people being offered monies from yesterday. Was there? There were those now, weren't there?
There were. I mean, so what's interesting about this thing is how, for the very first, I don't know if this is the first time, because I'm trying to find a way to couch this, right? So I don't know if this is the first time, but I want to, but for me, and I stand to be corrected, and I will, if you see any, if our viewers see anything that is, this is not the first time, let us know. But I see this as the very first time for me, in my own memory, where anti-protesters would come out, protest, and then say, they gave me money. I know them.
I know
I
what you're
can
thinking.
point them.
It's something you hear only during elections.
Exactly. Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
What's going on here? 2024.
It is very interesting because they're not lying about it. And in fact, there was a video that I saw on social media. This man came out and said, I was there, it's me. I know. I brought him. They came to meet me in this place and they gave me 5,000 naira.
That's
and I know
scary.
the person. It's like, what's the person's name? I can't remember the person's name for sure. But if you take me there, I will point at the person. And it's very interesting that this is the very first time in a long while where people are coming out and telling you as is and not pretending or lying.
A lot of these stories going around, but we'll take the next the next strip for today. Remember, I said there are two issues we'll be addressing, but let's move on to the next one. I'm hoping it's the one that I'm thinking. Let's see now. Here it is. Dad, why do you have those two T-shirts? Well, it depends on which side you're on. And he explains, I'll wear the white T-shirt if I see the police, and I'll wear the green one if I see the protesters.
Well,
do you remember the video of the young man who was actually fervently complaining about the bad state of affairs in Nigeria, the bad governance, yet his placard was, say no to protests? It was a very interesting video, and it went viral, of this man who was like totally against, everything the pro-protesters are protesting for.
Yeah.
But his placard was a totally different message. Apparently, he wasn't sure which T-shirts to wear.
the script was not, he didn't read the script properly.
The script
you know what I mean? It wasn't scripting.
As they
And
say.
honestly, the truth of the matter is this, Nigerians are tired. You can tell that they're exhausted and they're tired and they're desperate for a dire change. They want it now, They want it right now. You know, it's very clear.
What's your take on the absence of the president's address in whichever form?
Oh, goodness. I have,
Yeah,
I'm going
I
to
know,
take off my hat
speechless.
as a journalist and put on the hat
Don't
as a
take
Nigerian.
off the wig.
Yeah, of course, I can. I'm going to take off my hat as a journalist, put on the hat as a Nigerian, and say that I don't think an address would be enough.
Okay.
I don't think that him coming out to, although everyone has clamored and asked for him to address Nigerians, which of course he has to do as the president and the #1 citizen and the leader of the nation. Of course, he has to do that to say, I hear you. I have received your demands. This is the steps that we're taking. Wait for my next step. I think that is necessary to be done. It is expected of him, but I do not think that it will be enough.
Okay.
I don't think
we'll keep
it's
it there
enough.
because we have an entire show all geared for this conversation. So yes, thank you for that submission, Judith. Our very last one this morning is something that takes us outside of the protest confines, and it's a very interesting. Oh, hang on a second. There's this one here. Now, we've established an oil refinery and need high-quality crude from you. Well, I'm afraid we can't give you high-quality crude, but we'll give you high blood pressure.
Well,
The second instance from last week was all about Dangote refineries and the hardships that he is facing trying to relate with the Nigerian government. There have been talks about being provided crude from Nigeria at certain rates, but then again, it's still so tough to actually do business. There was another strip, I think, from last week, if I'm not mistaken, that had him, a picture of Dangote, carrying the refinery on his head and asking, please, I beg, come and buy, because I'm tired of Nigeria's wahala. Well, let's hope that he's not too tired, because we've got our eyes on that oil. We've got our eyes on the product that he'll be bringing out of that refinery. I just hope that not just he shouldn't give up, and Nigerians or the Nigerian government, give him a chance. Come on, please. Please do.
hey, there we are.
Well, hey, that's all we have for the strips for a Saturday morning, an August Saturday morning, our very first weekend for the month of August. It's a fine way to get started. Throughout the course of today, we'll be bringing you the realities that's happening outside with the End Bad Governance protests that have been going on starting since Thursday, and today in its third day. We'll also be taking our correspondents from across the country. They'll be giving us feedback on everything that's happening at their different locations. So stay tuned. That's all for the strips. We've got more coming your way. Breakfast Extra.
And you're welcome to our Weekend Warriors segment. This is where we celebrate individuals who have made remarkable contributions to our society. And this week, we honor a true icon, the late Onyeka Onwenu, who sadly passed away at midnight on Tuesday, July 30th. Onyeka was not only a celebrated singer and actress, but also a tireless advocate for social justice and equality in Nigeria.
Multifaceted talent whose impact extended far beyond the realms of music and film. Born on May 31st, 1952 in Onitsha, Anambra State, she was a woman of immense passion and dedication, known for her extraordinary contributions to Nigeria's cultural and social landscape. She began her illustrious career as a journalist with the Nigeria Television Authority, NTA, where her insightful reporting earned her widespread acclaim. Her documentary, Nigeria, A Squandering of Riches, showcased her fearless commitments to uncovering the truth and challenging corruption.
And as a musician, Onyeka's voice resonated with millions, transcending borders and bringing people together. She released numerous albums throughout her career with songs like Ekwe, One Love, and You and I, becoming timeless classics of all time. Her music not only entertained, but also inspired and uplifted, often addressing themes of unity, love, and social change.
Now, beyond her artistic achievements, Onyeka was a champion of women's rights and passionate advocate for the underprivileged. She dedicated her life to fighting for social justice, using her platform to amplify the voices of the marginalized. Now, her involvement in politics as a director of the National Center for Women Development underscored her unwavering commitment to creating more equitable society.
Now, Onyeka Onwenu's legacy is one of courage, compassion, and creativity. She was a beacon of hope and a symbol of resilience, whose contributions will continue to inspire generations to come. As we remember her today, let us celebrate the life of a true warrior who dedicated herself to the betterment of our nation and the world. And so we say, rest in peace to the golden stallion, Onyeka Onwenu. Your spirit will forever live on in our hearts and in our minds. Your songs will always play in our homes, in our rooms, on our mobile phones, on our headsets, and your movies will forever, and those scenes will forever be timeless. You were a triple threat. Acting, singing, journalism,
Advocacy,
everything. Advocacy.
Did you ever get
She
the
did
chance
it.
to meet her?
I didn't. One of the most biggest regrets of my life. I think I did run into her a couple of times, but I'm a shy bee, so.
So I'll tell you my experience. It was my first year in radio, and she had walked into the studio, and I was so overwhelmed. I'm like, oh my goodness, what do I do to Onyeka Onwenu? It was 20 years ago. She was like, young man, you're so eloquent. She was so graceful. I thought for her to say that to me in my first year in radio, I was like, that was just so.
That's all you need.
She gave me her number. I called her later in the evening, and she was so receptive. She was like, you know, keep doing what you're doing. That's how I started and everything. It was beautiful. And I met her a few times after that as well. But I just cannot remove her aura of grace. The way she spoke to you, whoever you were, not minding, you know, your age or your status. It was just a beautiful thing. And I'll always remember my first time meeting her and the conversation that evening. It was just at that point when GSM had just started. So, you know, we were looking for who to call. Like, let me call her. She graced my show.
Oh, gosh.
And her music. Oh, which one was your best one?
Oh, are you, so let's see. There was Iyogogo. I absolutely adore Iyogogo. I think that is an entire generation that would never forget Iyogogo.
What does Iyogogo mean?
I don't know. So
it's like a call for. I don't know if anybody's out there and can help us with the definition for Iyogogo.
Iyogogo. I remember Iyogogo was my. I think it's my favorite. You know, because it's so many. The song it really captures her dexterity in her voice and how she's able to blend in styles.
So you enjoyed it. You know, you used to sing along. Did you?
No, I don't. So I think it's more of music theory for me, or more or less than singing it, because of how it changes the tempos in the song, right? So it starts slow. Do you love me? You know, and then it goes.
I wanted to trap you. Actually, I was going to say sing it. Sing it.
I can't sing it.
Sing it, ladies and gentlemen.
I can't sing it.
Judith TB, her rendition of Iyogogo by Onyeka Onwenu.
No. No.
That's all you get.
That's all you get. But it was Iyogogo, the way the tempos change and how she continues to stay with it. And at the end, she goes, you know, with the high pitch, ooh, at the end, it's just, that is such a beautiful, timeless song.
Beautiful.
And when you continue to listen to that, it really captures the very essence of Onyeka Onwenu. So Iyogogo is by far the best thing that captures her voice. And then afterwards, after that one, the other one I like is Ekwe. And you can hear the Ekwe going on for so long, and now she's able to hold her breath. I just adore. I think she was a fantastic musician.
Iconic.
And her acting as well was superb. It's almost like she was theater trained to do it. How do you do that? How do you go from, you know, being a fantastic journalist and then you can sing so well and they can act flawlessly? What is it? Never, one of a kind, and never to be done again, you know, never to be done again.
Well, we say rest in peace, and thank you for gracing our lives with beautiful music and beautiful art. That's as much as
And also a beautiful woman. I mean, look at her. I remember the videos, the documentary, Nigeria is Squandering of Riches, just looking at her. She was just, 32 at that time, and she looked divine, beautiful. And she sported the same short haircut the entirety of her life, didn't change her looks. Beautiful, a beautiful woman. And of course, for her to be called the stallion, it's only right. You know, it's only right.
It is indeed. Our weekend warrior position definitely going to the icon, the late, great Onyeka Onwenu. And I'm sure that you agree out there with our submission here about her. You have your own experience as well, and the memories that she left with you. Remember them, and I'm sure YouTube will not have enough of people searching out her great songs from this week up until eternity. Do stay tuned. We've still got correspondents all lined up for today as we cover the End Bad Governance protests across Nigeria here on Breakfast Extra on News Central TV. Welcome again. It's still Breakfast Extra, and we're glad to have you with us here as we take another look into the stories shaping our nation currently. Today, we're focusing on a pivotal moment in our country's history, the ongoing End Bad Governance protest. Now, these demonstrations have been a significant force across Nigeria, bringing to light the voices of millions calling for change. Now, throughout this segment, we will be taking a comprehensive look at the events of the past week, highlighting the protests and their impact from various angles. We'll be joined by correspondents from across the nation, each offering unique insight into what's happening in their respective regions, from the bustling streets of Lagos to the vibrant communities in Sokoto. And of course, we have with us our guests from the far reaches of the country as well to tell us exactly how the developments and experiences are shaping the protests.
Now we start today with one of our correspondents who is live in Delta State, and is none other than Austin Azum. Austin, a very good morning to you, and thank you so much for joining us. Austin, good morning to you. Where are you at the moment?
Well, we're hoping that Austin can actually get us. We're hoping that his audio... Austin, if you can hear us, Austin, we're asking you to give us details about where you are.
Road, and you can see vehicular movements in and out. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Go ahead, please.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, please.
Okay, currently we are at Nebisi Road. You can see the vehicular movement in and out within the road. However, earlier on we saw the heavily armed security personnel stationed at Interbar Roundabout and Coca Interchange takeoff point and other places designated for the protesters to take off. But it seems the protesters are no longer interested in this ongoing protest, since what they perceive what will have happened to them on the first day of the protest. So yesterday we didn't see them on the streets, and today the road seems so busy with vehicular movement. So it appears none of them will be willing to come out today on day 3 to continue the protest. But however, across the states yesterday we gathered in Agbo, precisely along the Agbo Benin Road. We saw how some vehicles were destroyed by the protesters, vehicles coming in from Benin into Agbo and onwards to Asaba and Onitsha. Though it took the intervention of the security agencies, the police precisely, to dispatch them with tear gas. And as well, outside that, we equally saw what happened at Sapele. Some of the protesters, in short, the market women, they were the ones that protested at Sapele Market yesterday. They joined the protest and they abandoned their stores, their goods, and they went into the streets within the market, within Sapele there, to join the protest yesterday.
Austin, it's very strange, but I think we heard you say that the protesters are no longer interested. Why exactly is this happening so in Delta State? Why are they no longer interested in the protest, do you think?
Yes, the one of the protests, some of them, according to what they said, that they were poorly treated, badly treated by the police. They were dispatched by the police with tear gas. And not only that, they perceive that some sponsored governors, pro-government protesters were hanging about, and they couldn't continue because of their intimidation. So knowing fully well that if they come on the street again, probably they might have another police baptism. So hence they decided to retreat, and that was what we were told yesterday. Well, however, yesterday as well, we saw a handful of these perceived pro-government protesters hanging around within the designated area that these protesters are supposed to take off from. And security personnel were equally dead, so it created a lot of tension and apprehension. So any of these protesters who wanted to kickstart the process, whenever they see them, they just retreat, knowing fully well that these pro-government protesters will likely, cause damage to them, or probably going to confront them. So they just have to pull out from the road and hang around. So it prolonged to that extent to about 6 p.m. yesterday. So this morning as well, as we went around the state capital here, we saw the heavily armed security personnel still stationed at their take-off point. So obviously, it seems they are no longer interested, because if they are interested by now, they should have converged at their take-off point.
I need to know where I'm sure for every state there were designated points. For Abuja, for Lagos, there were designated points for assembly, for the protest. Where is the designated point for Delta? And have they been stopped from going into those designated points to go ahead to protest?
In Delta State here, let me use Asaba as a case study. We have the take-off point from the Interbad roundabout, the Coca Change interchange, and the Okpanam roundabout, the airport, and the cable points, and the Gogonogo houses. However, in these designated places, security personnel armed, they are already stationed there, and these particular areas I just mentioned, there are other pro-government protesters who are still hanging around just to discourage any other person who might likely come out to come and protest within the state capital here. But with outside Asaba, in Sapele precisely, they had their various take-off points. So yesterday, what we saw yesterday, the market women precisely, joined the protest from their market spots. And of course, that couldn't stop anyone from going about their lawful duties. In Agua precisely, where we had those protesters barricaded the expressway and beat all passengers and destroyed vehicles, it took the intervention of the security personnel, the police. The CP actually deployed the DCP who went there and was able to, douse the situation with the tear gas that he used to dispatch the protesters.
So Austin, in Lagos here, the protest actually ground a lot of things to almost a halt. On Thursday was pretty much nobody out there. Same as yesterday, most people would stay at home. Is it the same in Delta State? Did this affect commerce? Did it affect commutes? Did it affect livelihood of people in Delta State? And will that be any different now that it seems that the protesters are no longer interested? All right, I think we have lost connection with Austin there. Perhaps we'll try and reestablish connection with him as the day proceeds. But we still have plenty of our correspondents spread across Nigeria, and we'll be bringing you updates on exactly the locations that they have or that they are at, so that we know exactly what the pulse is like out there with the protests, perhaps maybe from this morning. So do stay tuned. There's still more of our correspondents to come. You and I have been on the ground yesterday covering the protests, covering the activities. We also have a guest reaching us from Yobe State. We'll be talking about that very soon. And the curfew that has been imposed on parts of Yobe State, we'll also be touching on that one as well. There's also a curfew in Kano State, if I'm not mistaken, and also one in Kaduna.
In the meantime, what you're watching on our screen there is a live feed from Ojota. As events are beginning to unfold, you can see protesters have picked up for today and already gathered at Ojota to start the hashtag #EndBadGovernance in Nigeria. The protest for day 3, that is from Ojota there. We do have our correspondents, Ben Alakede, as well as Ni Omoni on standby. They will be joining us in due course to share what they see and what they've seen, and also who they've spoken to whilst that they are there. We'll also be patching you over to Abuja when we are able to establish our live feed in Abuja with our correspondents there. That's Emmanuel Bagudu as well as Joshua Emarai and Edong Joseph. They have been covering Abuja as well. This is the hashtag #EndBadGovernance, hashtag #EndBadGovernance protest for day 3.
They are not interested in what will benefit the ordinary people. And that is why they will kill basic education. They will kill public education and take their children abroad. They will take their children to go and school abroad. While our children do not have access to qualitative education. And that is why we must say, as Nigerians, the right to education is enshrined in the Constitution. That is one. Our politicians must make sure their children attend the schools we attend. The school that our children attend, that is the school their children will attend. They must also, secondly, make sure there is the healthcare today that we have in Nigeria. They use the healthcare that they have provided for us. Let's all use it together. That is 2. 3, reversal of all neoliberal policies like subsidy removal, privatization, commercialization. The poor price of fuel should be reversed back to 100 naira. And some people say how? Yes, it is obvious from the House panel on petroleum. The oil merchant said they have not been getting subsidy from NNPC. A reasonable government will investigate that and make sure that all the money that NNPC claim they have been using to pay subsidy, they get it back and use it to fix our refineries. But he did not do that. He transferred the burden on Nigerians who have already been in multidimensional poverty to continue to pay for the rich, while the poor majority are living in anguish and poverty. We are saying no. The NNPC should be nationalized. The power sector should be nationalized and placed under democratic management of the workers, so that the working people, those who are working in that sector, will manage it. Because he who wears the shoes knows where it pinches. And so we are saying that all neoliberal policies should be cancelled. The reversal of electricity.
The scenes there is from Ojota, Lagos, where you see protesters there stating their demands, and you can see them all gathered. Remember that this is just the early hours for day 3 of the hashtag End Bad Governance there for Ojota in Lagos. We'll switch gears now as we are about to connect with one of our guests from Yobe State, as well as our correspondent.
Yes, we're being joined by Ahmad Dissa. He's the CEO of Green City Garden Nigeria Limited, all the way in Yobe. Ahmad, good morning. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Morning. Thank you for having me.
Yes, indeed. Now, Ahmad, please do talk us through exactly what's happening inside of Yobe State. We hear of curfews being imposed. Would like to know exactly why these curfews have been imposed and how it's affecting livelihood there in Yobe State.
Thank you very much. During the End Bad Governance protest on August 1st, there had been violation of laws, destruction of properties that necessitated the Yobe State government and the security operatives to impose a 24-hour curfew in some part of the states, actually, like Nguru, Gashua, and Port Iskum. 24-hour curfew has been imposed since August 1. And from the information I have, the curfew has not been lifted. But for the state capital, the Damaturu state capital, the situation is calm. Even the protest was not that significant here in the state capital. And one good thing is that both the government and the security operatives have stick to their mandate of securing lives and properties. Huge security presence is all over the city, and that had given hope to the residents of the state to go about their normal businesses.
Right. I mean, this is just day 3. I want to ask, we understand that it is sort of reduced, the protesters and the turn-up for the protests have reduced significantly. Since yesterday and today, do you see any uptick in that, or is it going to be a total shutdown as regards to the protests?
Actually, even as at yesterday in the state capital, Damaturu, where I reside, there were young boys of age between 12 downwards, yes, between 8 to 12 years, going around the city protesting. But the protest has reduced significantly. In fact, you can move around the city without seeing protesters for like maybe 2-3 hours.
Okay, thank you very much, Ahmad. We'd have to also move now to our correspondent in Borno, that's Kirawa. Kirawa, if you can hear us, good morning. Thank you for joining this morning.
Yes, thank you very much.
All right, Kirawa, please do talk us through what's happening inside of Borno State. We also hear that there's a curfew being imposed in parts of Borno. Could you tell us exactly why this is so?
Yes, the Borno State government immediately they realized that the nationwide protest during the day one witnessed an unrest where public properties were destroyed and so on and so forth, which led to a lot of serious issues within the state capital. The state government declared a 24 hours curfew. And immediately after the day one, in day two, they relaxed the curfew on Friday for 3 hours. Immediately after Jumat prayer, the state governor, after during their consultation with stakeholders and of course during their Security Council meeting, the government decided to relax the curfew today. As you can see, this is if you can see very well, this street is leading to post office area and then leading to Baga Road, and you can spot civilian JTF and other security forces are on the street, ensuring that movement is being. They ensure that everything is normal, because today is a sanitation day, and the state government yesterday declared today to be to uplift the curfew from 6 a.m. But due to the sanitation exercise which is going on across the state capital, there is limited vehicular movement, and it's a well-known fact that the state government usually restricts movement during sanitation exercise. And beside me is the way to Baga Road. You can see people moving normally after the unfortunate nationwide protest that led to unrest.
Regarding the unrest, we saw visuals of the NCC building, the not yet commissioned Digital Industrial Park. From 2 days ago, we saw plenty of people carting away chairs and property, and we also saw a fire somewhere inside of the building. Could you talk us through exactly what happened on that day and how this resulted in the curfews being imposed?
NCC building is not in Maiduguri, it's not in Borno State. It's that of Kano State, where it was it's a new construction by the Kano State government, which the government plans to commission the project maybe in a week or two. But unfortunately, protesters stormed the building and then carted away with most of the equipment in the building. But fortunately enough, some of the protesters have been arrested by the police in Kano State. But for us in Maiduguri, you can see security forces are on the street to ensure law and order, taking into consideration the destruction of properties, buildings, constructions, and so on and so forth on the street. But to God be the glory, peace is now back in Borno State, as the state governor has addressed the state today. Earlier in his state address, he called on the people to remain calm and not to get any violence, taking into consideration years of insurgency that the people have gone through. So by and large, peace is back to Borno. And very importantly, the state governor mentioned that the state government is not against any protest, but protesters should follow due procedure by writing to the appropriate authority. If they will, the government is willing to provide security and protection. But the issue of destruction of public property, that the government said will not condone, taking into consideration the years of insurgency that the state.
Now, let me quickly come to you, Ahmed, for the next question. And if Umaru can hear me, hopefully he'll be able to answer this question as well. And it's on the population or the demography that is rioting and also turning this protest to riots. They're mostly young boys and youth as well. And Ahmed, in your last submission, you sort of pointed to the age bracket of this demography. And so I have to ask, why is it much of a younger crowd? And can you speak more to where the social status? Where are they from? Are they just regular citizens in the state? And why then are they so agitated to dissolve into such chaos?
Actually, these boys, even from the way they handle their play cards, the cards they are displaying, some of them cannot even read or write. They mostly even handle it upside down. That's showing that they don't even know the message they are trying to pass across. So I believe these young boys were instigated to move around the streets by some people who think they can't come they can't be in the public to protest, but they want the protest to happen. And I would like to call on parents to know the whereabouts of their children, to be cautious of where their children goes to, where the kind of friends their children follow, so that at the end of the day, their children will not become victims of violence.
Right. Now, I want to say a very big thank you to you, Ahmed, for just taking out the time this morning to speak to us from Yobe. They will appreciate you for coming on the program. Umaru, if you're there as well, a very big thank you to you, and we'll definitely come back to you if there's more update from Borno State. Now, the scenes that you're seeing on the screen there is from Ojota. Those are live feeds there as the protest continues in Ojota. It's a bit picking up now. We can see that the crowd has increased even more a little bit. And we'll just watch. This is day 3 from the hashtag End Bad Governance protest happening live now at Ojota.
See them mothers, they chop with chicken. Then they chop with chicken for their time for school. Time for us to go to school. They say no money. They say instead of money to put for education, they go give you loan. Hey, Jesus. Sorry for anybody who collect loan. You know who get job? How many loan you won't collect? As they talk loan like this, all the old public school begin to increase their school fees. UI, 500. This one, 1 million. This one, everybody wants chop for the loan. When you go to collect loan, first session, 1 million, second session, 2 million, third session, 3 million, fourth session, 5 million. If you can carry us out, at fifth session. When you finish school, hey God. When you finish school, you don't get money to pay back. You don't government. You don't government. You drink garri. Body go tell you. Body go tell you. This land, our land. They dey for Niger Delta. They pipe oil. They pipe oil. They pipe oil. They pipe oil. Men dey no job. Men dey no job. Why is there underground? Person dey they pipe and they go. You go by yourself like this, you go cry. You go ask why this country.
shishi. They say no money dey. Who they chop this money? Answer, who they chop this money? Who they chop the money? Who they chop the money? Make I tell you. Now only one thing go solve am. I go sing am, now go follow me. Social revolution. Social revolution. The only way to fight oppression. Social revolution. Social revolution. Social revolution. Social revolution. The only way to fight.
And since they're from Ojota here in Lagos, as the progress, or rather the protest continues here on day 3. We'll be bringing you visuals and, of course, information about that and many more as we have our correspondents spread across Nigeria to give us the details and updates as we need them here. So do stay tuned here on Breakfast Extra as we continue to cover the protests. We have guests coming in to discuss especially about the demands that the protesters have been asking of the Nigerian government. There's so many, and we'll be analyzing a few of them. And if we can't finish today, we'll continue that tomorrow for Breakfast Extra, a Sunday edition. So do stay tuned. Let's go on a short break now. When we get back, more inside the protest happening here in Nigeria.
As we continue our coverage with the hashtag End Bad Governance protests, which have now entered the 3rd day for today, the 3rd of August, we turn our attention to the demands of the protesters, their specific demands that they have put forward by the Nigerian youth. Now, these demands reflect a deep-seated desire for better governance and accountability from the Nigerian government. Now, while the protests have captured national attention, there are growing calls for dialogue, even in the absence of a direct response from the president.
Now, to help us unpack these demands and explore their implications, we're joined by our guest, and that's Akin Olaoye. He is the founder of House of Lynette, and we'll be talking to him about some of these very interesting demands put forward by the Nigerian youth. Akin, you're welcome. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Yes, Akin. So first of all, I want to ask you what your view is on the protests so far, the first 2 days, and this, the 3rd day, from your experience.
So the turnout has been largely impressive across the nation. You would notice predominantly in the north, we're seeing a new attitude with Nigerians deciding to be a lot more vocal. There's been past, assumptions that northern Nigerians are not feeling the brunt of a bad economy and bad leadership. I think the last few days has revealed the opposite. In Lagos and many other areas across the south, you've seen people turn out in high numbers, peacefully for the most part, except for where we've seen interruptions or disruptions on police force. It's created, the optics that makes it come across as violent. Now, I'll talk about the looting, and criminal activities, with burning and all of that. That's a whole different conversation. But in general, people have been very, very eager to come out. I think today you probably see a larger turnout than the last 2 days, just given the fact that it's a weekend.
Right. Now, I also want to talk about, before we get into the demands, hopefully, I just humor me for a second, would you? We have seen the protests in the last 2 days. We've seen some level of violence in the north, and we've seen some level of resistance from the police, from the Nigerian police as well. And we've also seen anti-protesters who have also attacked and maimed the protesters. That's the hashtag End Bad Governance protesters. And also there have been measures by the government that they have said that the heavy security or the heavy presence of security that we have seen in strategic locations across major cities and the 36 states, plus the FCT, as well as the designated points that they allocated for the protest. And now with day 3, from most of our reporters that we've spoken to, from Delta to Borno State, and also to Yobe as well. It seems to be the number or the turnout for this protest seems to be declining. What do you say to that?
So I wouldn't arrive at the conclusion that it's been declining. Let's look out for today's turnout, and then we can reach that assessment. In terms of the police force deploying assets and manpower, we commend them for living up to their fiduciary duties. I think it's their responsibility as, again, for many of us as taxpayers, to see that we have the police out to ensure there's law and order. Question is, who's the police securing in this instance? I'll say for the most part, we've seen a lot of responsible police, activities, but some of what we've seen has not been so inspiring, given the fact that you've seen thugs attack innocent citizens with the police just standing by and observing, not making arrests or even trying to again offer some wall of insulation from some of that. You talk about Brno and a couple other cities where again there's been reports of violence. Look, a country where people are feeling the worst of any policy that can hold you down. Net worth, for the average middle class household has been cut in half. Record unemployment, record inflation. You're talking about cost of living that the living can no longer afford. Of course, it's bound to reveal a lot of the rot that we have in our system. You talk about illiteracy in many parts of the country. You find unemployed youths out there. Many of them are misguided. So again, when they see a protest of this magnitude and an ability to express themselves, it always equally offers some pathway for criminals to emerge and try to take advantage. It's for the police to make sure we push back on that. For the most part, a lot of protesters have equally done their part as active citizens with making arrests of individuals returning looted items. So we cannot say, the protest has created an opportunity for criminals to thrive, even if it's an event or an activity organized by the police force. In this era, given the state of things in Nigeria, you're bound to see people who would choose, the wrong path. Now, the demands of the protest, there's no Nigerian that wakes up every day looking at the fact that the Nigeria of today is a lot worse than the Nigeria of 4 years ago, 8 years ago, 12 years ago, or 20 years ago. I don't expect any country to progress in a negative direction and expect its citizens to move around and act as though all is well and good. So you're bound to see these types of agitation. And for the most part, the organization has equally called for peaceful turnouts, people being civil, collaborate with the police. And then there's this, poor narrative that, the organizers of the protests are unknown and they're in the shadows. Everything you see, people holding, placards indicating what their demands are, it's there for the naked eye to see.
All right, let's talk about these demands now, Akin. Let's talk about youth employment initiatives. Now, these are one of the demands from the youth to the Nigerian government. Now, with the high rate of unemployment, it's going to be present in the minds of these young men as they're out there protesting. However, what are practical strategies that you can suggest for the government to adopt to create sustainable job opportunities and support the youth and their, entrepreneurs?
So you have a country where about over 60% of its population are in the youth demography. This same demography is finding the least investment in activities that impacts their future. You talk about the fact that over 70% of our youth today are unemployed. Where we talk about human capacity development, investing in education, investing in skills acquisition, they're equally creating a plain level field for young people to be able to climb up the ladder, pull themselves up, build network, start families, equally create wealth. None of that, you can brag about in our current society in Nigeria today. You talk about, economic policies. Let me even give you an example. If you're a 21-year-old graduate, from a university, Babcock, University of Ife, and you start a small business. Let's even say, okay, you want to export products out of Nigeria. How easy is it to export a product out of Nigeria for products that are locally made? Let's even talk about local business, ease of doing business that we often brag about and hear all kinds of, government, conversations around. If you talk to the average entrepreneur in Nigeria, young, in the youth demography, they would tell you all of the challenges and complexities it is with even finding ways to extract profit from a business they wake up 8 to 8 trying to conduct daily. Now, you talked about something else that is quite important. The fact that we need to see that the youth can look to the future and say, okay, we have dreams that we can achieve. You talk about imports, for example. The customs is charging black market rates on import duties and customs excise, and you ask yourself why. So when you look at a lot of policies and a lot of statements from the government, there is no alignment. You talk about access to credit. If I'm a 25-year-old entrepreneur and I want to get a $5 million loan, I'm being asked to go get a landed property or come up with some sort of collateral with interest rates exceeding 30%. What economy have you seen interest rates at 30% create an opportunity for any business to be profitable? So I can go on and on and on. Things are just not working in Nigeria. Then you have a political establishment, an elite that finds it convenient to spend 21 billion on a VP's mansion. You're purchasing private jets in excess of 100 billion naira. In the same country where a young individual cannot look you dead in the eye and say, I will start a business, and from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m., I'm going to have constant power. So I have to find capital to buy a generator. I have to either find money to buy some type of renewable energy, maybe solar panels. How many young people can afford that? So everything about the Nigerian economy is suppressing young people from being able to achieve their dreams. And then you talk about the fact that, you have insecurity, ravaging the northern part of the country. So things like agriculture, where young people can go into and build networks or create wealth for themselves is impossible because they're going to be met, on your farmlands by a bandit or a terrorist or whatever it is, they want to brand them. And you just ask yourself, next, you talk about technology, access to even capital, using your Naira, which is again, purchasing software or services on the internet is next to impossible. If you're a young Nigerian graphic designer or you're into IT, getting payment to your Nigerian bank account from a foreign employer where you work remotely is next to impossible. You have to find all kinds of corner, find third-party apps to find ways to remit money to you. I'm just saying, Nigeria is not working. And for young people, there's no way forward.
All right,
well, Aki, thank you so much for your submission. We do have another guest joining us live. He is one of the front runners there for the hashtag End Bad Governance at Ojota, Lagos State, and it's Hassan Taiwo Soweto, and he joins us live from the protest ground. Hassan, if you can hear me, a very good morning to you. The scenes that you're watching there is from the protest there at Ojota. You can see officials of the LNSC, which is the Lagos State Neighborhood Security Watch. There's also police officials there just gathered right next to where the pressmen stood. There he is. There is Hassan Taiwo. Hassan, well done and very good morning to you. Now listen. I think Hassan still cannot hear us. Hassan, if you can say something for me. Not a professional with the talk back, but we'll try to see if he can, if we're able to fix his audio. But in the meantime, Aki, you were talking about entrepreneurs and basically the future of the young Nigerians, especially at this time in this dispensation that we find ourselves with the economic downturn. You are an entrepreneur yourself. You are the CEO of House of Lynette. And a couple of months ago, one of your branch, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe one of your small outlets for the House of Lynette was pulled down, which was at the the landmark beachfront. It was one of the properties that was pulled down. One of the things that happens with situations like this is that we just put into numbers the amount of people that lost their jobs, but we sometimes don't give human angles to that number. So I'd like for you to speak to me about your journey when you found out about your property being pulled down, and also the employees that lost their jobs after. I'm getting somewhere, but just give me, I would like your submission with that one first.
As a young entrepreneur that decided to bet on Nigeria, I'm a diasporan, worked hard, built a nest egg, and figured, rather than invest that money in another man's country, let me, relocate back to Nigeria. So I established the business equally, at the peak of the Buhari recession. But again, found very strategic ways to, stay afloat, expand locations. So Landmark, obviously, being a very, what I call, well-planned tourist front with a blueprint that I could see aligning with sort of the vision for where I was taking my business. I felt would be a great location. So we moved in, had a very nice container front store, had about 4 employees there. Just beyond the 4 employees, there's an ecosystem of support individuals. So you're talking about technicians that, help with store lighting, marketing staff that work on the weekends. So if I looked at that location, at least 15 to 20 people, just surrounding its operations. Seeing the government come in, rerouting the planned coastal highway again in the middle of an economy where we're saying, where do we make the right investments? For me, I found out to be quite absurd. But again, stripping out an entire ecosystem that's, really putting our tourism industry on the map. I can't explain it. Forget the fact whether I'm an entrepreneur. Yes, I found ways to reabsorb some of my staff, but a few of them had to lose their jobs. Very unfortunate. Even the ecosystem of suppliers that, make local T-shirts and beads and bracelets and, beach shorts. Those people they don't have anywhere to supply those wares. So it was not just one outlet, but then an ecosystem that empowered a lot of young people. Let me be very, very, specific, and equally an ecosystem that was a thriving industry that could really, again, bring in FDI, create local opportunities, and make us a desirable destination. So it was very sad all around, very sad.
Thank you for that. So 3 things I took out of this. You were a diasporan who decided to come back home and invest. And then you also wanted to contribute because you were hoping, you believed in the Nigerian dream and wanted to contribute to nation building. And then lastly, the young people that you employed, homegrown talents, and all of that put together, right? So those are 3 things that I took away from that submission. Now, in trying to do that, this has now happened. One government policy have now happened that this persons have been out of a job, right? Yes or no?
Correct.
Thank you.
Correct.
And so with that, when you now look at the cause of that was because of a super highway, a new highway, a coastal highway from Lagos to Calabar. Those policies that the government have brought in, they said that it will in turn it will contribute to the economic terrain of Lagos, and by large Nigeria is a coastal highway. It would unify all the states together. It would increase commerce and so to speak, and so much more. And so the policies will take time. That's what the government have said. They said the policies will take time, but they will work eventually. Why not wait for the policies to work?
We're talking about a country where continuity is not a culture, right? The Buhari regime comes in, starts a project. The Tinubu regime comes in, says, "Oh no, want to move in a different direction." Let's even go back to this coastal highway. I studied engineering. So before you would even come in and say, okay, you want to build a super highway, you've basically, done a lot of consultations. You talk about ecological studies, given the fact that you're positioned right on the Atlantic, right? You're equally looking at, impact of community. What's, the net effect? Is it, you basically do your feasibility studies. You do your discovery. You try to find, areas that, again, is this the best investment, given, the state of the nation? Are we, positioned for expansion? When we talk about, creating new opportunities in tourism. So how do you kill something that is a tourism that's got a strong foundation, brings in FDI. I mean, I can tell you this, over 25% of the customers and individuals we engaged at that landmark beachfront were not Nigerians. These were tourists. So you strip out that entire tourism ecosystem to create a new one that's not going to show up for another 10 years, at least, at a minimum. So when you even talk about infrastructure projects and, you know, how it creates or opens doors to new opportunities, let's even focus on what is currently existing today. You have a TINAPA that is paying billions. Nothing comes out of it. You have a lot of roads that are, you know, that got construction started halfway through, have been abandoned. You have an east-west road that has been in construction since I was 14 years old. I am 42, and you're now telling me that overnight, miraculously, you will look at a very difficult terrain like an ocean front, and you will build what you've not been able to accomplish with the east-west road. Please save me the bullocks.
Thank you very much, Aki. Now we're going to try and establish communication with Soweto, who is currently at Jota, the protest ground currently. Soweto, good morning and thank you for joining us. We've been trying to establish connection with you. I hope we have it now.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much, Soweto. So Soweto, please give us an understanding of what's happening currently at Ojota, where you are at.
Well, we are here this morning once again on day 3 of the End Bad Governance protest at Ojota, Lagos. Nigerians are gathering in bits and pieces, in trickles, to join today's protest. And the police so far appear to be complying with us to ensure that we don't have the same experience we had yesterday when hoodlums tried to attack us. We hope that the police commissioner will maintain this level of professionalism to the end of today, because like we have made repeatedly clear, despite the threats against us, despite the danger and the risk, we are never going to submit our right to freedom of assembly, our right to freedom of expression, our right to gather and protest peacefully. These are fundamental human rights that have been won by generations in the past for Nigeria. We are never going to submit it. And that's why this protest has continued today, despite the risk and the danger. What we continue to say is that the Nigerian people should lose their fear. They should no more be afraid. Come out and join us. This struggle, once again, is to demand the reversal of fuel price hike, demand the reversal of electricity tariff, demand the reversal of all the anti-poor policies that President Tinubu government has imposed on all of us. We are fed up with the condition of hunger and hardship, and we are saying enough is enough. We are also demanding a restructuring of Nigeria's economy in such a way that it favors the mass majority of the people instead of what it is now, where it only favors a tiny rich few. Capitalism remains the fundamental problem that is wrong with Nigeria, and that is why one of the very most important demands at this protest is for system change, is for socialist change. That is what we want.
I have to ask you, right? And I asked this question yesterday, and I have to ask today as well. Today is day 3, and from the visuals that we've seen, from the live feed we've been seeing since 9 a.m. this morning, it seems to be a small crowd. Is the crowd diminishing day 3, from day 1 to day 2 and now day 3? Or is there been an uptick in attendance of protesters?
It's still early days to say what size of the crowd will be here at Ojota. Yesterday when we started, we also started very small. And at the end of the day, the crowd kept growing. The reality is that after 2 days of protest, it means that people are not able to wake up as early as before because of fatigue. But I'm very quite sure that more people are making their way down here. Today is also a work-free day, it's a Saturday. You can expect that even larger crowd will gather.
Right. I can see the security personnel behind you there. What's their presence been like? I mean, today, has it been bigger? The presence of security agencies, have there been more security agencies, given the fact that On day one, there was a number of arrests from our conversation from yesterday evening. There was a number of arrests. About 12 persons were arrested. How was it like yesterday after the protest? Was there any more arrests? Were protesters accosted by anti-protesters? Were they thugs who accosted other persons? Or how's it been like? Talk to me.
Well, thankfully, there was no such incident yesterday at the end of the protest. From all our information that we gathered at the end of yesterday, there was no arrest or attack on anyone. And that's why we hope that the same thing will be the case today.
All right, now regarding the demands that you put forward, reversal of price hike when it comes to petrol and the other demands, if the government says, okay, we are ready to dialogue, I'm wondering who exactly they'd be dialoguing with. Which youth leader is going to be representing the youth? The call for dialogue has been louder the past couple of hours, so I'm wondering exactly how this is going to operate when the time comes. Do you have any information about this?
Well, like the protesters here at Sokoto have made clear right from day one, they don't expect that the government has to wait for a roundtable conference before it begins to meet the demands. Protesters have said since day one that they have made their demands very clear. And I completely agree with that, because the reality is that we have to stop the tradition whereby government would expect that until it sits at the roundtable with some people, that is the only time we can begin to address the concerns of people. This protest ground is the assembly of all Nigerian people who are affected by the economic crisis, and we have made our demands very clear from day one. What we want any government that is responsible to do is to continue, begin to address and implement those demands. We think that it will be a complete waste of money trying to get some people to Abuja in order to sit down to begin to negotiate. In any case, the policies of this government were actually introduced without discussing with anyone. Look at how fuel subsidy was removed. It was simply removed at Ibu Square during the swearing ceremony on national TV. President Tinubu did not have any consultation with anyone. So why should it wait for a dialogue, for a conference, before he reverses what he never consulted us about? So we have to be very clear about this. This is not a struggle where some leaders will sit at a conference drinking tea or drinking coffee. If the president is sincere and is prepared to listen to the demands of the Nigerian people, then we expect to begin to see actions being taken on those demands that have been made clear since day one.
Well, Sokoto, I want to say thank you. I can hear the buzz keep going up there. So I do want to say thank you for that. We will definitely keep touch with you, or be in contact with you, or in communication with you. There we go, as the protest progresses. But many thanks to you. Well, I want to come to Aki for this one. Aki, one of the calls has been electoral reforms. The call for electoral reform to ensure free and fair elections is one of the major demands, right? And one of them was also to probe the billions of naira, about 33 billion naira that was used there. About hopefully I can get that figure correctly, but it was over 33 billion naira that was allocated for the elections in 2022. And so it begs to ask, 2023, I beg your pardon. And so it begs to ask the question of reforms. How then can these reforms happen? What will be the electoral reforms? Because for this last election that produced the Tinubu administration, we saw an improvement in terms of tech. I won't say improvement with the process, but improvement with tech. So BVAS was introduced, which is the bimodal verification machine. There was also the platform where the results were supposed to be uploaded for all of Nigerians to see. That was also introduced as well. There was also an extensive exercise of voter registration process that was extended oftentimes. And we also saw an uptick in registration with young voters as well. And so when we call for electoral reforms, what exactly are these reforms?
Thanks for that. And I would say this, the electoral amendment that you saw Buhari assent into law basically got a lot of oxygen post-EndSARS, and I have to give the youth of this country a lot of credit. I was equally involved in a lot of forums where we came up with, drafts, God rest his soul, Rio, Aristotle, Samson Itodo, and a couple other very, very active Nigerians. And, up from, the early registration, introducing limitations on, political appointees from not being able to run for elected office. There were a lot of improvements to the Electoral Act that we saw give us mileage. Now, we have a young democracy and nobody's looking for perfection day one. But you come out of the experience of 2023 and, the gross mismanagement of INEC as an institution. After, he traveled to Chatham House and made promises for the international community, again, eroding Nigeria's integrity, eroding our stand in front of the world. You come back home where the elections were held. On election day, I went to over 40 polling units, helping to make sure that at the end of the day, people understood the process, make sure the results are captured, make sure it's transmitted on the BVAS device, all of the metadata with, registered voters, issued ballot papers, making sure that the system worked. So we have very smart people in this country that came up with a process that you could say, I have faith in the system. That's why people were very emotional about that election. But then as the end of the election progressed and we saw how it was being managed, where human interference came into the equation, technology and software applications that could have done the work and made it seamless, the way I would transfer 20,000 naira to a colleague or to a relative and they check their device to get 20,000. It's not that they're getting 14,999 because there was a system glitch. None of that. INEC, again, as an institution, basically failed to meet its mandate. Yes, 33 billion indeed is a lot of money. Are we having house hearing on accountability? Are we asking the INEC chairman to submit himself to discuss all the operational failures? Ballot papers not being transported across the country. You had situations where, again, there was interference. Elections should be over in Nigeria on election day. How hard is that to achieve in 2024? So as citizens, as young people, asking for a system that works. So if you want 36%, carry go. But don't take us into a courtroom because you have an institution that, again, has intentional failures and disruptions introduced where we have clear-cut laws and guidelines to see that execution is 100%. So again, we need to have hearings. Equally, you have a lot of unanswered questions with, the Electoral Act amendment. Results expected to be transmitted electronically from polling units to collation center. Yes or no? Let's not have all of the technicalities where an INEC chairman can decide what works or what doesn't work. If you can't transmit results election night, hey, schedule elections. You're saying technology fails, okay. But don't make it seem that, you transmitted half the results and then the other half had to get collated, with pen and paper. So a lot of what you saw in River State, where the will of citizens were upturned on its head, what you had in Benue upturned on its head. I mean, we cannot have a country in 2024, a young population of human beings that, I'd say this, lead top technology organizations across the world. And back at home in Nigeria, we can't get elections right. It is frustrating.
Okay, so how then can we get it right? I have to ask, how then can we get it right? Is it, the introduction of BVAS was to make sure to verify that those who are voting and not, usurpers or paid to vote, or, just to nib electoral ballot stealing in the board. There was also the case of uploading the results, although they said they had technical glitches, but technical glitches are normal. Network can fail at any time. We are in Nigeria. In the last 2 days, network have failed completely. I can't make phone calls. The internet is...
Did the network fail really? Oh, but go ahead.
Well, I'm not MTN, and I don't know. I'm not the yellow or the green and all the other colors network providers. So I do not know, right? But in spite of the colors of the rainbows that we're seeing, There are times where network will fail now. So which do we want? Is it mobile, where they now say, you know, somebody can now vote via their mobile phones? How then can we reform it where it is fail-proof?
So in every system, in every society across the world, it's human nature to interfere. But laws allow for people to understand that there will be repercussions. And when you have a country where the judiciary is up for sale, you have, judicial rascality, where a lower court judge, overrules, a superior court judge, you start asking yourself, are we a banana republic? So first of all, let's understand that we have a country where our laws are being respected and upheld by the courts. Secondly, we talk about competency, right? If you have an INEC chairman, a Mahmoud Yakub, that cannot, again, lead an organization and see that people voted with 200 ballot papers and results to show 200 split between two candidates can be transmitted in micro or milliseconds, the same way a bank MD has the duty in ensuring that the deposits and the trust of investors in his company are being upheld. If a bank CEO was to transmit 200,000 naira, where you deposited 600,000 naira, he would not have a job. So why do you have an INEC chairman in that chair? If only he was put in there to usurp and basically act, carry out orders of the establishment. So these are the types of questions we're asking. You send an email. You don't get half of an email, you get a full email.
All right.
So since when did technology start working half and half? So we're just saying competency, rule of law, and accountability. And then equally have a House of Reps that does the work of the people. If the system fails or the institutions don't live up to it, then you summon them and you hold panel hearings.
Right. Well, Akin, we're going to come back to this conversation, but we need to go on a very short break. If you're just tuning in, you're watching the hashtag #EndBadGovernance Governance Protest live coverage here on News Central TV. We'll take a short break. Stay with us.
Nigerians are loving people. Nigerians are wonderful people. They are not lazy. We are not here to make wahala. We are saying let our subsidy come back. Let fuel price go back to 200. That is number one. Open the borders. When you came, you complained that there will be enough agbado, there will be enough beans, there will be enough garri. Now you take everything. And you say that we don't talk. We must talk. This government, we are your people. We are not against you. We are saying this is where the shoe they bring us. Hunger day. Food no day. So let there be opening of the borders. That little the open our borders. We must have our subsidy. Hunger they kill us. I have 2 daughters. Your go to school is a problem. Many of our Nigerians here, their children, they can't pay school fees. What is happening? This is not the Nigeria I used to know. Let Nigeria come back. Let the greatest of Nigeria come back. Let the power of the Nigerian people come back. We cannot be slaves in our own land, so we must protest. We said 10 days, but it will be beyond 10 days. What's your message?
What's your message? What's your message to the president?
My message to the president is this: open the borders. Open the borders. Let there be food. Nigerians are hungry to buy food. 5,000 is like nothing. I left the house today, I didn't eat. I was coming, look at it. I said, let me buy pop-off for the protesters. Look at pop-off I bought. I didn't eat anything. My wife gave me 1,000 naira. I said, I will not eat it alone. I will use it to buy pop-off. Look at it. No food in the house. I'm a school owner. Most of the time, these children come to school without food. Without food. Beloved and president, bring back our subsidy. Let fuel be sold for 200 naira. Open the borders. Let there be food. Number 3, reduce the cost of education. You want to kill our children. Let our university graduate. protest. You know this time one place. Yes, don't tell me, don't tell me that. Do not tell me. Who? I don't want to know. I don't want to know. I don't want to know. This one I say, play. After we stand up in protest. After we play, we don't protest. Because we don't protest, we go work out. This one not be protest, so we don't play. When we say, they are not one about because if they come out, they don't have election. Everyone is gay. Some people don't collect money. Yes. We are protesting. Let's go out and protest. We are not fighting. We are not looting. We are doing peaceful protest. Yes. We are not fighting. We are doing peaceful protest. We are not thieves. We are not armed robbers. We are not looting. We are not beating people. We are not destroying people property. We just came here to protest. So let's go out and protest. Yes. Let's go out and protest. We dey joke for here. We are lead for the go. They go now. Let me mark it. Lead for the go.
Scenes that you just saw there is from the Ojota grounds there, where the protests are continuing for day 3 for the hashtag End Bad Governance, and that's Ojota, Lagos State. We're going to continue to bring you more live coverage of the protests across the nation as we have our reporters and, of course, our correspondents live and on standby across the states in Nigeria.
I'm going to confirm now exactly who we're going to have on next. I'm being told that we have Sam Kagbo, who's going to be joining us, giving us some analysis of everything that's happening, and also going to be joined by Shore as well, who's going to be joining us to tell us. And we have some very interesting questions to ask him as well. So if you stay tuned, we're going to be connecting with these individuals and bringing their analysis of the happenings currently for the End Bad Governance protests happening across Nigeria. You've just seen scenes from Ojota now, and very interesting input. I don't know if you heard the young man from earlier talking about how hungry he was.
Absolutely.
And also the individual who's, well, he made mention of the fact that it seems that the protests are not as effective as he thought that it should be. Did you catch that?
Well, I mean, it's very interesting that they would say that it's not as effective as they'd like it to be. Well, we've seen how the crowd has also been. We've also seen the government's response to it. So in terms of effect or how effective it ought to be, well, the government hasn't made any response yet. They haven't been able to speak to it. The presidency hasn't said anything. So responsive, effective or not, is left to be said. But at this point, we have been informed we have Omoyele Sowore, who is an activist as well as a journalist, and he joins us live on video chat. A very good morning to you, Mr. Sowore, and thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for coming on. We also been told that Barrister Sam Kagbo will also join us later on, but he is on video chat, so we'd just like to acknowledge him as he is on standby. Now, in the meantime, let's kickstart things with Mr. Sowore. Day 3 of the hashtag End Bad Governance. We have seen violence across this, at some parts of the country, particularly in the north, where we saw looting in Kano and Kaduna. We've also seen an imposed curfew, 24 hours curfew from the day 1 in Kaduna, Kano, and also some curfew as well in Yobe as well. We also saw some part of looting at Inyanya, a border town between Abuja and Nasarawa. That as well, also a curfew was imposed in that town, part of the town in Abuja. But we also saw tear gassing, rounds of live ammunition shot at protesters from day 1 and day 2. And in day 1 as well, some protesters were arrested and accosted by thugs and arrested by the police. But Mr. Shore, in the last 3 days, what is your take on the hashtag End Bad Governance protest? What do you think about the turnout, and the turn of events so far for the last 2 days?
Well, it was a phenomenal success, and I want to thank Nigerians who heeded our calls to come out across the country. As you have covered yourself, these protests kicked off in Abuja on Thursday, and very quickly spread from Port Harcourt to Maiduguri, from Badagry to Naibawa Park in Kano, and by the evening of Thursday, it had almost happened across the country. And this was what I told you the last time I was on the show, that this is going to be very massive, and it has continued. Yes, there's been some initial problems, which was caused by the government and security agencies, because they had thought that they could use their usual tactics of repression to stop Nigerians from demanding for their fundamental rights, which basically is about their own existence. And I'm sure they were shocked to know that within such a short period, Nigerians were conscientized, mobilized, and were able to insist, regardless of what the government did. You have covered extensively all kinds of strategies and tactics they used: bribing people, threatening people, bringing in traditional rulers, religious leaders, bringing in traditional practices to threaten people, especially in Lagos and Abuja, and then eventually cracking down and killing Nigerians who are just simply demanding for their rights. With regards to the looting that happened in Kano, it has now been established that it was carried out by people who were brought in by the APC to attack the government house. It had nothing to do with us. And that was why the protests continued the next day. Without, the moment the government was exposed as being behind the violence and the looting, the protests went smoothly the next day, which was yesterday, and it's going to continue today. Even though somebody had expressed that maybe the crowds weren't as big as it started, of course, people needed to take a little bit of a break, but it would continue, and I assure you that these protests will continue to be massive for the next, as long as the protesters decide to be on the streets, which is, for now, is going to be for the first 10 days, and we'll see what goes on from there.
So I want to bring your attention to a comment made by a lawyer, that's Ebolu Adegberuwa. I'm not sure, I don't know if you've heard about this, but he, counting some of the losses that Nigeria has experienced in the past few days, called for an end to the protest and dialogue. I'm going to read exactly what he said and verbatim to you. Now, he said, I appeal to the protesters to withdraw themselves from their various protest grounds and to suspend the protests immediately and indefinitely, to give room for meaningful dialogue and engagement with federal government. He continues here, given that the protests were said to have been hijacked by sponsored agents, it is necessary to avoid further losses and casualties. The organizers and their representatives should embrace dialogue. I'm wondering what your take is on this particular statement, noting that initially he is one of the people who also called for the police to actually support the protesters from, I think, earlier last month. What's your take?
I've spoken to him. It's his private opinion, and he's entitled to it. He wasn't speaking for the organizers. He said that's how he felt, and I'm sure he has more information now that will be helpful to him going forward. But there's nothing wrong if he calls for anything he feels can bring about peace. You know, a lot of people would say different things at this time, and Ebu is extraordinarily brilliant guy. He was a student union leader. He was president of University of Obafemi Awolowo University. Student union when I was student union president at the University of Lagos. So we've known each other for a long time. So there's nothing to worry about. The protest will continue. He understands that very well.
And what's your take on the losses that we have experienced? Like in the north, we had the situation where there was the looting of the NCC yet to be commissioned building. There was also the shooting of a young man in, I think, Kano. And there's also curfew in Kaduna State and parts of Nasarawa as well.
Well, the protesters have broken the curfew on their own as of yesterday. There are no more curfews that I know of. The casualties you have mentioned, as you know yourself, was caused by the police. The police went out to kill people. The looting in Kano was carried out by the APC people. So there's nothing related to the protesters regarding this. The protesters have demonstrated what this is all about by stepping up the next day, which was yesterday, and protested across the country, and there are no casualties because the government and the police have been exposed. You know, if you were on Twitter, day before the protest, Lagos police claimed that there was a bomb in Lagos just to scare people and that they detonated. But we knew these tactics, they were going to do anything possible, to blackball the protester and the organizers. What they were trying to do on the first day by killing people and looting was to show to the country that, oh, this is what we said. These people it's going to be hijacked. But this is day 3 now. Who has hijacked the protest except what the government did? Nobody. The protest is firmly back in the hands of Nigerian people. And they have demonstrated that this is going to be non-violent. The only violence you notice, and this is very important for framing by the media, was carried out by the government. So we should be calling on the government to fish out the policemen and the thugs who carried out, because they know them, they work together. These are their affiliates, they're their friends and cronies, they're the marshals of violence in the country, and they know them. And we are going to ensure that everybody who participated in killing peaceful protesters is brought to book.
And now, it's very interesting that you're saying that the government should be held responsible, because I want to extend a right of reply to you. Yesterday, during the Breakfast Central show here on News Central TV, we had Shaga Links, hopefully I'm saying that correctly, Shaga Links, who is, of course, quite popular on social media, especially on X, that is Twitter. And he said that you ought to be held responsible for those that have died during the #N bad governance protest, and said that you clamored for this protest, and so they followed your directive and now have died, and you ought to be held responsible. So let me extend a right of reply to you regarding his statements from yesterday and this accusations from him.
I don't take him that serious to be replying to that. This is very illogical to hold somebody who is fighting for justice responsible for crimes committed by the government. The people who carried out the looting, the killings yesterday are government officials. That's the police, or probably the DSS might be involved. We haven't seen the army act in any way to suggest that they were involved. So how do you then hold somebody responsible for exercising his own fundamental rights? I think there's something wrong somewhere with his thinking faculty.
I must also ask you as well about the entire process in terms of the government response and the heavy presence of security agencies, but most particularly the tactic and mode of engagement with protesters. Now, we understand that there are designated points allocated for this protest across states, for Lagos, Abuja, and other major states as well. But when protesters don't go to that place, they are tear-gassed and sporadically shot at in the air, which has also resulted to one stray bullet hitting somebody, and now that person, unfortunately, is dead. I want to ask about that tactic. What would you to your reaction on that? Should they not be, properly geared for protesters, which is, of course, the riot shield and rubber bullets and water cannons, instead of tear gas and live ammunition?
In the first place, I want to tell you that we were the ones who asked for designated places of convergence. And in Abuja, we requested for the Eagle Square. And the minister said they can't give it to us because he didn't see our letter. We sent the letter to him, he ignored it. He told them not to collect it or acknowledge it. And so in Lagos, they said they came with a law court order that we should stay at Ojota and somewhere else. And we responded that since there are convergence zones, people should, the government of Lagos, since they're the one who went to court, should provide buses, clean and safe buses to conduct, to carry protesters to and from the place they designated. They never responded to that. With regards to our police and our security agencies, you all know them. They are not interested in any professional conduct. That's why somebody or several persons must be held accountable for the crimes of killing and murder of innocent civilians in this case. The standard procedure for engaging protesters is to wear non-lethal or to put up a non-lethal resistance by the security agencies. But our police are so trigger happy. They're always happy to kill their fellow citizens. I don't know how long this is going to continue, but this is part of why there's end governance. And this can quickly snowball into, I think the police is provoking Nigerians to have another NSAS added to this end bad governance. Otherwise, there was no basis to be killing people who are conducting themselves peacefully. By nature, protests are not supposed to be confined to anywhere, especially when the protesters are defined from the beginning. There was ample notice given to the government that they will be marching, there will be rallies, and all sorts of protest activities going on. So there was no basis for what the police did, but they knew what they were doing. The IG of police was trying to please the President Tinubu because 4 years was apparently added to his tenure, which will make sure doesn't happen, by the way. And the government, you keep referring to the government hasn't even said a word, apart from poking their hands in the eyes of Nigerians and mocking them. The government hasn't said a word. So there's no government response as far as I'm concerned, other than to just be mocking people after they have murdered them during the protest. And another thing I wanted to add is that if the protesters were not convinced and committed, why do you think they will keep coming out every day, even after they knew that they could get killed? Because people are tired, people are hungry, they've been stripped of their dignity. And for a lot of Nigerians, death is better than the kind of miserable existence that they have now. It's very sad that we have this kind of people in power who have no regard for our people and their existence. And, they behave as if, government is set up to become the greatest enemy of the people of the country.
Okay, a bit of balance here. Most of the comments and responses that we've had from the protesters out there, they've given credit to the security authorities for actually being out there with the protesters and supporting them, save for some few places, especially in Yobe, where we had that instance of the stray bullet, or rather Kano, rather. But let's talk about uniformity of the protests from across the country. Here in Lagos, we're recording good numbers, we're recording good tales, we're talking about support from the security agencies, but in other parts of the country, it might not be so. Later on in the show today, we'll be talking about the instances of violence from the protests. Now, regarding uniformity, we have clearly identified youth leaders who are taking charge in places like Lagos, Port Harcourt, and of course in Abuja. But it's not so in the rest of the country. What's your take on how this is panning out with different variations of the protests happening, some of them being overtaken by miscreants? In the north, we saw the looting of the NCC yet to be commissioned building. Please, your take on that.
Well, this is part of the reason why, even as journalists, you should continue to investigate every word you put out there. You keep referring to the looting of NCC, but you are leaving out the people who have been identified as looting the NCC. The Kano State government had also accused some individuals of carrying out what happened at the NCC. I saw in the news yesterday an APC youth leader who was part of the looting, who had met earlier with the deputy governor of one of the candidates in the APC. So, and the other thing that may not be far-fetched, which is another thing you should look at, is that how are you sure that it's not the NCC people themselves that arrange the looting? Because this is a place that was commissioned several years ago. It wasn't now commissioned. They just refused to put it to use, and now they want to, put it to use, and suddenly it's looted. Why would you have such multi-billion naira center just left unprotected, and it's now, according to them, looted? But the focus on looting doesn't address the fundamental reason that this protest was being sabotaged by the government. Yeah, in the protest that has happened, we have counted over 26 states or so that have participated in this protest. We're focusing on Kano, as if those chairs that were looted by the APC people are more important than the lives that were taken. The NCC can build a new center, they can refurbish it, but you can't rebuild life. That you can't bring back a person that has been killed. So it's important that in this narrative that we keep hearing of, as if this protest was designed to loot, it wasn't designed to loot, and it did not do that. That is the reason why the second day of the protest, the protesters were able to prove to the world, not to Nigerians now, to the world, that this protest was not about what the government tried to paint it as by going back. And this day 3, you are covering day 3. Have you heard of any looting? And there's no looting associated with the protesters. Looting has been associated to the failure of the security agencies, either in places where they have connived directly with the looters themselves, that's if they are not looting these places themselves, or in places where they refuse to carry out their fiduciary duties to protect. We gave them ample opportunity. We met with the police IG. We met with him on Zoom, and we discussed what this is what it's about. We asked them to stay at alert, to protect. They said no, they are not interested. The IG said it during that Zoom meeting, that he's not interested in protecting us if we refuse to be confined to where they put us. He said it. If that happened in any country in the world, the IG should have resigned or be fired by now. We are not a serious country. And that's the reason why people are asking for end bad governance. Because when you have people who are put in places of responsibility, we should act whenever there's need for them to do their jobs. And they refuse, and they tell you arrogantly that they're not interested. You keep them there. How are you going to have a country that works for you, or me, or anybody for that matter?
Mr. Shore, we're pressed for time, but hopefully you can be able to answer my question before this time is over. And it's a twofold question. Yesterday, the chief of staff of the Nigerian Army addressed a nation, or rather, he addressed pressmen, and he said that the media was giving too much press or too much coverage to the protest. I would like for you to respond to that statement. And then secondly, if the president was to heed to the demand or the call to address the nation and protesters, what would his message look like? What would you anticipate his message to look like to put an end to the protests?
For the chief of defense staff, they live in the past. I don't know this part of Nigeria's problem. If everybody who is in the mainstream media refuse not to report this, he will get the best reporting that he deserves. There's a different arm of the media now, known as social media, that does justice to everything, including what you don't want to know. So he's just setting you guys up to fail because he lives in the past. They still think that the entire Nigerian landscape, media landscape, is NTA and Radio Nigeria and the Daily Times of those days. That's the mentality of the chief of staff. Otherwise, how can you say that the biggest event happening in the country should not be covered? Who does that? Who does that? I mean, I can't even imagine that he said that. And you're talking about the president, what he will say. That's not my job. That's the job of the president, if he's the president. It's not my job to advise him what to do. I'm not one of the people who elected him to power. And I've said it repeatedly that I don't believe he was elected by Nigerians. And this is what happens with terrible elections. It produces some of the most insensitive and incompetent people who feel that they're not responsible to anybody. So you can't blame him.
Well, I mean, the numbers, when you look at the numbers, it's up for debate. But Mr. Omoyele Sowore, we appreciate you for doing this with us and coming on. We want to say thank you so much and a very good morning to you.
Thank you so much for having me. Have a nice day.
You too. And that's Mr. Omoyele Sowore. He is an activist and a politician, and he joined us live to discuss the hashtag #EndBadGovernance. After the break, we're going to be joined by Barrister Sam Kabu-San, and he's going to talk to us about the demands and look more into the demands of the protesters. After the break, join us again.
Welcome back. And yet again, we have our guest for our coverage of the End Bad Governance protests across Nigeria. Joining us now, Barrister Sam Kagwe will be talking to us and giving us his piece on everything that's been happening so far. Barrister, good morning and thank you for joining us.
Good morning and thank you for having me.
Good, good. So, sir, first off, let's ask what your take has been so far on the protests, now in its third day, with everything that has been recorded from Lagos to the north to everywhere in the country. Many tell about the fact that there might be waning support for the protest, while others claim that it is going on as planned. What's your take?
I've been in those throughout, and I've only been able to follow up from the media, but in a word, I do not think it turned out as ominous as was predicted to be. And on the other hand, I do not also think that it is as successful as the planners had anticipated. So I think it's a midway, I think, for both parties, both the government and the planners of the protest. Both of them had their stories justified one way or the other.
Barrister Kabo, I would let's talk about the demands, right, for the protest. You just said that it's been somewhat fair with the turnout, but also not as successful as you think that they'd hope for it to be successful. I mean, I would have loved to talk about why you think it's so successful, but that's definitely going to come for another time. But you are a member of our legal system and years into the legal system. And one of the demands of this hashtag End Bad Governance is the constitutional and judicial reforms, and to sponsor executive bill to the National Assembly to amend the constitution to allow for referendums. And also Nigerians want to vote on a new constitution, and the process of appointment and discipline of judges should be transparent. Now, we're going to focus on that the latter part of it, judicial reforms. If there were to be judicial reforms in Nigeria, what would that look like?
First and foremost, that would start with empowering the judiciary to have the capacity to perform and be effective in justice delivery. The other aspect of it that has been of a justifiable concern is the mode of recruitment. Of late. There is that obvious hijack of the process by the politicians, and the quality that is coming into the judiciary is of concern to practitioners, and I think for those who are actually calling for a reform in the appointment of judges and justices has to do with this hijack. But beyond that, to me as a lawyer, and I'm thankful that you have mentioned the fact that I've been a lawyer for a very long time, I would be a little bit circumspect in passing blames, if that's the word, because you can only give that which you have. The judiciary is overworked, but not so much empowered. When I mean empowered, they do not have the resources. It is just so good for us and convenient for us to say, oh, they have not been able to meet up the expectation of the public in justice delivery. But have we actually, as a public, paid attention to the conditions under which they are functioning? Not too many of us know that up to today, judges take proceedings in longhand. Things that other places have forgotten 10 years ago. They would still have to take the proceedings by writing, listening to you, and writing like a copy secretary. And that by itself is wearing out the personnel of the bench, and also one of the reasons for the delay in justice delivery. And we also have the compounding and confounding problem of electoral disputes taking over the entire man-hours of the judiciary. Up to this moment, there are still cases pending in court that have to do with what? The elections that have gone by a year ago. So we have to look at that, and I have had to say, both in writing and in forums like this, to say, let us create a constitutional government like our neighbors next door and most other countries. Those specialized courts would attend to political cases and leave mainstream litigation to the judiciary as we have it today. But as long as we have this dual role of the judges that we have, not too many of them, how many of them do you have? Take a look at Lagos. Lagos, I do not think they have up to 100 judges. And yet, in a year, sometimes they have up to over 10,000 cases to be heard and settled by human beings. Definitely, that is overburdening the personnel of the judiciary. So if we want to have effective justice delivery, we have to look at that. We cannot pretend that all is okay or fine when we know that it is not. How would you expect me to be comfortable when I, as a senior advocate, would advise somebody to say, go and settle, because if you take your case to the court, it might be there for another 10, 20 years. That is scandalous, but that is the reality. There is hardly any case outside the political cases today that can be heard, determined and settled finally within a space of, say, 2-3 years. No. It's going to take longer than that. And the three-tier system of resolving these cases, you finish at the High Court, you go to the Court of Appeal, you go to the Supreme Court, and on each of these tiers, you have delays. So that is concerning, and that should be looked at, definitely.
Mr. Cabo, I want us to touch on another point. Let's not go too far from the judiciary now. Let's talk about corruption and accountability. This is also one of the demands of the protesters to the Nigerian government. Given a country that has, a long history of decades of decay when it comes to corruption, and one that has always called for accountability of its governors or people who are in governance, it seems like a very big fit for the government. But what would the response to this demand from the government? What should it look like? What should it be?
Definitely corruption is everywhere, and one of those concerning malice of the judiciary. But I've always had to say this, of the three arms of government, the better of them or the best of them, if that's the word, is the judiciary. But the judiciary should be one that should be above board. Of course, the members of the bench, the judicial officers, are from among us. If corruption is part of our DNA, philosophers, or what the psychologists call it, the collective unconscious, things that you inherit, the society gives to you as given. How would you now expect the people you draw from that corrupt society, that society that does not feel ill about corruption? You have your own brother, your own sister, your own mother, your father, your son, your daughter come in with a loot. That's what I would call it. And you are comfortable because what you are benefiting from it, definitely it's going to impact on what? The most sacred arm of government, which is what? The judiciary. There is never really any moment in the history of man that this concern has not been highlighted. Go to the Bible. Go to every society. Corruption within the what we will now call the judiciary has always been of concern to the society. But there have been some moments in history where people attend to that better than we have today, because those society could link and connect and see a correlation between what? The quality of justice delivery and the quality of what? The individual. If indeed we have a very effective and one of integrity service delivery in the system, we might have been able to put the politicians in check. We might have been able to resolve some of this problem that these young men are going to the street for. But it is because the courts have not been effective in actually pulling down the excesses of politicians because of corruption. That is why you see them playing this godly, what would they call it now, attitude. So what am I saying? Yes, corruption is there, but I will come back to us. What are we doing about it? Don't we know about it? Don't we know those who are involved in corruption? Are we not the givers of the bribes? Are we not the one corrupting the system? We don't say anything. How many of us, when in your life have you seen a brother going to complain about what he sees untoward about his brother? We see people protecting their own. Our own thief is our own thief. It's our own. It is only when it is the other people's thief that you are going to town with. Who work? So what am I saying? We have to rehumanize ourselves. Until we rehumanize ourselves as people and as society and as a country, we're going to have this problem. And as long as this problem is there, deepening democracy will be difficult.
It's very interesting that you say this, Barrister Kabo, because I remember having a conversation with a dear friend yesterday, and that person said that we're all compromised, by corruption, and that we're all compromised, and we are also at risk of being corrupt. Even a child that is 10 years old or a child that is 1 year old can be corrupted because it is so ingrained in our society, and it is, social conditioning. And so you making a submission there, it just sort of, makes me recall that conversation from last night. But let me ask you, still on judiciary, right, and still on the judicial system, there has been talks, that, and critics and public analysts and those commentators, social commentators who are looking at the system have said repeatedly that this looks like a state capture with this current dispensation, and that the judiciary is compromised. And just recently, with the move by the Senate to increase the pay of judicial officers, this will also sort of increase this state capture that they are warning about. What is your take on this? Is this state capture? Is this compensating the judiciary to sort of capture them even more, or do they deserve a pay rise?
Go with the last one. They deserve a pay rise. They deserve to earn as much as the politicians in government are earning. They work harder than the legislators. They work harder than those in the executive, and they should be paid well.
But when they
there is hardly any country that I know where you have effective. I'm coming to this.
Okay.
I'm going to give you some examples. There's
Okay.
hardly any country where you have an effective judicial system where the judges do earn higher than public officers, even in some cases higher than the president. I have gone to Swaziland, and Swaziland is one of the countries in Africa with the least crime rate in Africa. And here is why. The police and the judicial officers are paid and well attended to, better than those in parliament and their ministers. That is the way it is there. I'm sure if you know what happens in America, you know what happens in the UK, you know that they earn more than the politicians because they work more than those people. And once you are a judge, you are what? Hived and corralled away from the society. You are not one that is supposed to do business. The politician can do business, you cannot. Your life and time, energy is meant to be what? Donated wholly and solely, 100% to the job. And if you are not well paid, you have children to go to school, you have a family to take care of. What creeps in? Temptation. So let them be paid well. What are we talking about here, in fact? If we go by that route, then it's dangerous. Why would a staff in NMPC earn 10 times what a judge earns? Why would an MPA worker earn more than a judge? And we don't call that state capture. To me, anybody who make that proposition, I think the person is unfair. And categorically, I would say that's a very dangerous narrative.
So then let me ask you, because we're pressed for time, very quickly, let me ask you, what then would be a decongestion of the judicial system? What then, how can we decluster the system so far that cases are gone through as quickly as possible? Let's not forget also the electoral part of it, where cases from the elections go to court. It takes a long time before judgment is passed. How can it be as seamless as possible, where there are no conflicting court orders, one person isn't running from this court to another, so much so that it is reformed in a way that is seamless? What would it look like?
Let's have specialized courts to attend to specific areas of the law, so that there would be what? Specialization and professionalism along those lines. That is key, and that is what very, 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 very necessary. Secondly, artificial intelligence has come in to help all of us in all of this. If you have a digitalized judicial system whereby whatever order or judgments you make in any part of Nigeria is online automatically and is accessible to every other judge, it becomes easier, so that before you make your judgment, you click in to see whether there has been any pending or there has already been a decision on this. I'm talking about now, I'm not talking about appellate court, because the appellate court system, you have the cases now accessible to all of us because of what? Tools like the Law Pavilion and its artificial intelligence. It makes it easier now. Those in the appellate court, they no longer have any excuse to have conflicting judgments. If they do, and like they have, and that is concerning, because what? They no longer have that excuse. But The cases in the courts of first instance, the High Court, they are not reported. So you will not know what your colleague in Abakaleke has decided, and you are in Kafachat. What do you do? You have a very brilliant, sweet-talking or persuasive lawyer comes and sway you, and you give a decision that is contradictory to what your brother has said. Meanwhile, the law is, and our judicial system says, once a court, that is the High Court, all over Nigeria,
all right,
has made a decision.
Barrister, I want to say
that decision.
We are actually out of time this hour, but we've spent the most part of the hour with you, and want to say thank you very much for joining us to give your take on the present state of things regarding the End Bad Governance protest. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir.
And we're still going to be going to some happenings right now inside of Ojota, live from the protest ground. So let's take some visuals from there and see exactly what's been happening. And when we get back, there's still more, as we're going to be visiting certain happenings across the country regarding the instances that have recorded some unfortunate violence. Hey, welcome back. It's still the live coverage of the End Bad Governance protests from across Nigeria here on News Central, and we're bringing you information, details, and especially from our correspondents spread across the country. We've had instances from Ojota and also Delta State. We're going to be moving on now to other states inside of Nigeria. We've got a developing instance inside of Delta State, and we'll be joined soon by our correspondent then. But first off, we are going to be going to Abia State, where we have Chinwe Anyonwe, rather. And she will be giving us details about what's happening on there. Let's try and establish. I'm being told that we don't have her yet, unfortunately, but we'll still be coming to her on that one. But we've seen visuals from Ojota.
Yes, indeed.
We've seen visuals from Delta State this morning. And of course, we also spoke to one of our guests from Yobe State and also Umaru Kirawa from Borno. And currently, these are visuals from Ojota once again. I see that the protesters have spilled into the street. However, this might not seem to be the designated place where they're supposed to be restricted to, which would have been inside of the park.
Yes, indeed. And it's very interesting. It's whited out. It's white now. I thought it was Bernard was going to speak to us because the person at the screen at the time was Bernard Akede. But I must also mention that for the southeast and also the eastern states, we've seen little to no protests at all that have kicked off. We haven't seen any participation with them from the eastern states and also from the southeastern states particularly. And hopefully when Chinwe Ogeli comes in for the Abia State, we will, hope to see whether or not, that has changed for day 3. But what's interesting is that long before the protest has started, during the talks of it, on social media, they were very clear, and they said, the Igbo, community, they said, we're not going to be part of the protest. We're not going to put ourselves in the mix. We'll let everyone else continue. And so we have seen for 26 states, but mostly for the southeast and eastern states in Nigeria, we have not seen anything yet. So hopefully when Chinwe joins us later on during the broadcast, we're going to see if that changed today, giving the 3rd day of the hashtag End Bad Governance protest, I beg your pardon. But Delta has been interesting as well. Delta is also partly south, partly eastern.
Let's go back for just a second. It depends who you're asking regarding the participation of people from these states that you speak about. There are certain bodies that came out to say that no, they won't be a part of it. But then there's a difference between actual protest and support. So there's one thing to note there, whether they are supporting this and can't come out for certain circumstance regarding the issues that they have in the east. There's the sit-at-home restrictions that they're already battling with out there, and some other unique factors.
Yeah, and one of them is marginalization.
Depends who you're speaking with regarding that. Now, you were talking about Delta State.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Delta is also southeast and also south as well, predominantly south, but we also have Igbo communities that are also there as well. And we also saw a little bit more, they tried to come out a couple of times. They were dispersed. It's been very slow. I mean, from when we had Austin earlier, and Austin said, it just looked like an everyday, but he would be on ground to see if that picks up later on. But in the meantime, we just got information that Bernard Akede has joined us. He's joining us live all the way from Ojota. Bernard, if you can hear me, a very good morning to you, and thank you so much for joining us.
Okay, so hang on. Hold on. Just hold on. Judith, I can hear you. Just give me a second, all right? Just give me a second. I'll explain what's going on. Just hold on. Give her a minute to wrap up. People are angry, and I'll explain why. Oh yeah, Otito, just all right. Otito, give us a minute. Just give us a minute.
This time we're protesting today.
All right, Judith, I'll explain what all that was about. All right. Now, the protesters had decided that they want to march from where they were all the way to Ojota bus stop, right? And the police have decided that they will create a perimeter right here that will prevent protesters from going beyond a certain point, from here to the other end. A total of about maybe 300 meters, 400 meters at the most, but along this particular road, ensuring that the protesters do not go beyond this road, which is the designation that they have been given. So there's a police truck there, and the police officers are right here behind me. There's another police truck at the other end, ensuring that protesters do not go beyond this perimeter. Now, the protesters want to go beyond here. They say they want to get to Ojota bus stop. The police have said this is the restricted area, and that's the cause of the fracas you're seeing behind me. Some have decided they want to move on. They want to go to K2. The police doesn't let them go this way. They'll go the other way. But the police is ensuring that no protester goes beyond the perimeter that has been created, and that's the reason for the fracas you just saw.
Well, it's very interesting when they're being restricted. I remember when we had Justice Eleonor Ejono yesterday, and he's a public affairs analyst and also a legal practitioner. And he said, look, when you are restricting persons, you have over 20 million residents in Lagos. If 500 out of them, 500,000, even 500 wants to protest, how would they be able to join and protest? How would they be able to come in and protest? Because there's only one point. So if I'm coming from Badagry, if I'm coming from Ekpe, if I'm coming from Sokoto or Festac, or even all the way to Vaux or the other axis past Satellite Town or Ojo End, how can I come out and protest and make my way back? And so, being able to move around and picket as they're doing that, people can join and also disperse as well. But from what we can see, it's very clear that lack of movement is going to restrict numbers from coming in or even demotivate them from protesting.
I totally agree with what you said, Judith. Yes, there are people who, remember on the first day of the protest, we were on the island, and then people had this same argument saying that, movement has not been restricted, but it's been difficult to move because of how not many people decided to come out. So moving from one place, from one part of Lagos down to the protest ground gets challenging, and then moving away from here will be challenging. Secondly, agreeing with your point, we have over 20 million people in Lagos, residents in Lagos, averagely, and if at least even 100,000 people decide to come down here for the protest, this area that has been given to them will definitely not be sufficient for them to stay here and peacefully protest. However, the argument now is if the crowd goes beyond the restricted area, it may be difficult for the police to control the crowd. One. Two, it may be difficult for them to identify who are peaceful protesters and who are infiltrators, like we've seen in previous protests. I believe that's the reason why this perimeter was created. Remember yesterday as well and the day before, the protesters were asked to be confined inside the park right here, and they complained that they are not sure, they cannot trust that they will be safe there if they are in there. Also, the outlets and inlets are not enough in case there is a stampede, and so they decided to stay on the road, and they were granted that permission. They were granted the chance to stay on the road. However, just like you said again, the numbers are increasing and they want freedom of movement. The police has denied them that, and that is why we are here where we are. So it's a dicey situation. It's like this and like that.
Bernard, exactly what is the interaction like? We see that the crowd is a bit agitated. Well, we also see that the police are, well, it seems like they're calm right now. So if you give us exact description of both sides, what exactly is the crowd, what's their expression like, and what are the expressions of the security forces?
I move through the police if they'll just allow me so that you can see. There's a formation here by the police ensuring that nobody, sorry sir, please, ensuring that nobody goes beyond this side. There's a vehicle in front there, please, sorry, ensuring that nobody goes beyond that particular location. So the police have been marching forward and the crowd have been marching back, obeying the rules of the police. Now behind this particular line, you will see the protesters there. I'll still move closer so that you can see. Also, we have some of the leaders of the protest group speaking to police officers and then having a conversation amongst themselves, ensuring that they, in one way or the other, obey whatever orders given by the police, while still trying to ensure that their protest goes on as peacefully and as organized as it can go. Now, there are two things I've noticed in the past few days. A peaceful protest is one thing, and organized protest is another. Now, they've been peaceful, yes, but it's looking like there are certain groups of people here who want their own voices to be heard as well. Different people struggling for the microphone so that they can speak. Different people struggling for their own ideas to be taken. So while the organized group here who are in branded T-shirts are saying one thing, there are people screaming, oh, we've heard what you said, stop talking, we want to start marching. And then that's where the protest gets divided. And of course, you know what happens when a house is divided upon itself, it will collapse. You know, so from what I'm seeing, if they do not have one voice, there clearly will be an issue here. And where there are issues, that's where security operatives will come in.
So the intention of the protesters to march to another venue, how far is this place? Exactly what do they intend to do when they get to that destination? Is there a destination at all, or do they just simply want to proceed on the street so that they can be heard more?
Now, according to what they said over the public address system, they said that they want to march all the way to Ojota bus stop and then back here. However, the police have said nobody's going to Ojota bus stop. The police has created the perimeter saying here is where you will stop and there is where you will start from. It's just, they say, a perimeter of about 300 meters straight line along this Ojota road, and that's what the police have given them. So now, as they're being asked to move back, there are some police officers in front of me in complete riot gear, ensuring that the protesters move back. I'll spin around so you can see. Now you're seeing the protesters, you'll see the police officers who are marching forward as well. Okay, ensuring that everybody moves back to the location where they all started from, so that they just converge there and do not go beyond where they've been asked to stay.
All right, Ben, I want to say thank you so much. We appreciate you for that very impressive coverage. We'll continue. We have to wait to hear what that man is saying.
I'm interested as well. I want to... Yes, please.
Audio, please.
Step out in masses. Don't let these people suppress our movement. They are doing everything possible to suppress us. But the people is more than the government, whoever is there. So please, mo beyin, ẹ̀yin ìyá wa tó wà nílé, ẹ jáde, ẹ gbárùkù tì wá. Ẹ má jẹ́ kí ìyálọ́jà kan bà tiyín jẹ́ o. Ọjọ́ ọ̀la àwọn ọmọ yín, ọmọ yín, ẹ má jẹ́ kó bàjẹ́. Ẹ jọ̀wọ́, n tó ń dà là ń jà fún. Ẹ̀tọ́ yín àti àwọn ọmọdé wa là ń jà fún. Ẹ gbárùkù tì wá, ẹ jáde. A ò rí yín lórí bí. I need láti rí yín kẹ́ wà pẹ̀lú wa torí ẹ̀yin lẹ bí wa, ẹ̀yin náà lẹ rọ̀ wá, ẹ̀yin náà lẹ máa gbárùkù tì wá. Please do not be intimidated. Ẹ má jẹ́ kí ráìsì òróró 5,000 àtọ́ fún yín kó jẹ́ kí ọjọ́ ọ̀la àwọn ọmọ yín bàjẹ́. Ẹ wá join one. Please do come here.
What's the issue now? The police have said we should not go beyond that distance that they've given you. What exactly is the issue?
That's because they have their mago court injunction. What power do we have? Apparently now.
So what do you want to do now?
What I'm fighting for is for us to contain the crowd and be organized and just respect the rule of law, because I still do and believe in judiciary till tomorrow. So let's maintain and contain ourselves in that spot, that designated area, and no, let's not agitate. Let's not incite anything against it, because the police are here to protect us.
All right, Judith Mazzino, you've heard from him now. The crowd have marched back and they are right behind me chanting songs of solidarity, ole ole. But the police clearly will not let them go beyond that point. And that is exactly where we are at the moment.
so much. I didn't think that my Yoruba would, my minute Yoruba will come handy at this time. And he was saying in Yoruba, they're asking for the mothers to please come out and support the movement. Now, we'll switch gears now to Chinwe Ugeli, who is live in Abia State, eastern part of Nigeria. And she joins us from the capital, Umuahia. Chinwe Ugeli, many thanks for being on standby and staying with us. Let us know, what's the situation at the moment in Umuahia? We seem to be having technical issues there to bring her. We will try. Chinwe, I understand you're back now, Chinwe.
Yeah.
Well done. All right, what's the situation? Let us know.
Well, the situation has remained the same since the first day the protest started across the country. The people in Umuahia, Abia State, and of course the Southeast are not protesting. So we thought that by the time the protest got to the second or third day, they would join in. But as it says right now, there's no protests anywhere around me.
So Chinwe, now this lack of protest, does it translate to a lack of support for the protesters that might be engaging in protests in other parts of the country? And what other significant issues or what other significant instances could be contributing to the lack of presence of a protest in Umuahia?
If you can hear me.
Yes, we can.
Okay. It's not out of lack of support for the protesters elsewhere in Nigeria. I think from the people I have interviewed from the day one of the protest, their voices are clear there. They are saying that they are tired of protests, that the protests will not achieve much results. Other people are also saying that they are tired of having to lose their people to protest each time there's a protest anywhere in the country, that the Southeasterners will be targeted at. I think what they are doing also is respecting or obeying what their leaders in form of the governors, the lawmakers, and even the APES social-cultural group of Hanese Indigo told them before now, to stay away from the protests in order not to become victims at the end of the day. So that is what they are doing. They have said that there is hunger in the land. They are also hungry, but then that they will not be part of these direct protests for the simple reasons that their people always end up being the victims at the end.
Well, I wouldn't. You're right, because we've seen statements in the press there where the former Vice President Atiku Abubakar, as well as the presidential candidate for the Labour Party, plus the former ex-governor of Anambra State, that is the person, Mr. Peter Obi, has also called for persecution of those who have made statements, discriminatory and incitatory statements about the Igbo community. But might I just ask, right, about the presence of security personnel? Now, we've seen, states like Lagos, Abuja, and even Delta State, when we spoke to all of our correspondents, and also parts of the northern states as well, heavily, the heavy presence of security agencies present there. Is it the same with Abia State? Have you seen security personnel at very strategic locations?
Well, the security agents wouldn't be doing anything if they came out, because there's actually no one to control. There's no one to push back. There's no one to, order or instruct on what to do. So, but on the first day, they were in some strategic locations in the city. But right now, as I speak to you, everything has gone back to normal. People have moved on, and there are no security operatives all over the town. So it's as if nothing is happening. And I tell you that if not for the media, probably people in this zone wouldn't understand what is going on in the rest of the world, in the rest of the country.
So it's business as usual. There's no disruption to commerce. There's no disruption to movement or commuting around, is it?
None at all.
Oh, okay.
Chinwe, I want to say thank you so much for taking out the time to speak to us this morning. We appreciate you for joining us. That's Chinwe Ugeli. She is our correspondent from Umuahia, the capital of Abia State, East Nigeria. We're going on a short break, and we come back in this. We'll link now to Abuja. Apologies for that. We're now taking to Abuja, some live feed there in Abuja as the hashtag End Bad Governance protest continues in the country's capital.
Fight for a better country for our own country, while making the current generation of citizens the most happiest across the world. We've got the revenue, we've got the resources, human and capital, to make that happen. But we've been caused by very wicked and unpatriotic leaders who have subjugated the Nigerian people to poverty, hunger, starvation, and even multidimensional poverty. The time to take back our country is now. Three major requests that we've been making and still making is one, we want a reversal of the removal of fuel subsidy. Secondly, we want a reversal of educational subsidy, its removal, and thirdly, electricity subsidy. We cannot continue the country so blessed, yet citizens so poor. It is unacceptable, it is barbaric, it is inhumane, it is not acceptable in any way and in any way whatsoever. Finally, we've been having pleas from our leaders.
All right.
Our demands, okay, three of them. Our emphasis, one, the reversal of West subsidy, two, the reversal of electricity tariff, subsidy removal, three, the reversal of educational subsidy removal.
Okay.
And finally, we made a very...
It's fine, it's fine.
What do we need it for? Finally, on this, we want a clear electoral report. We do not want the situation that happened.
Are you okay now?
In 2023 to happen. We will move our protest from here soon to the INEC headquarters. We want a clear, concise, precise, and deliberate law. As in requesting, or rather, telling INEC to directly transmit results electronically. The fraud that Mahmoud orchestrated his criminal empire, the INEC, last year, must not repeat itself. The Nigerian people are tired of this fraud and have come to the streets to resist them. Finally, we are appealing to our fathers. They can. We are appealing to the Islamic movement. We've heard their pleas. We want them to come here on a Monday. We want to have a dialogue with them. We want to clearly articulate our grievances that we will, as a matter of urgency, consider the expediency of now. Come here, let's make it happen. We want to have a dialogue with them so they could tell the president what our demands should he not have heard. God bless Nigeria.
My comments, please, let's calm down. We are continuing with this democratic process. And the reason why we want this process to be very democratic is so that the Nigerian government can learn from the Nigerian youth. That this is not to take the opinion of people together.
Now, these are visuals from Abuja currently where the protest is ongoing, and I'm sure that we have our correspondent there, Emmanuel Bagudu, whom I'm hoping is listening right now, because I need to ask him about a very interesting instance that happened with one of the News Central staff there, if I'm not mistaken, who was hit by a canister of tear gas. Emmanuel Bagudu, are you with us? Can we talk to you, please?
Yes, I can hear you. Go ahead, I can hear you.
Good.
Thank you.
Emmanuel, thank you very much for the visuals, but please do tell us about the instance that we recorded from earlier regarding the canister hitting one of the staff there in Abuja at the ongoing protest.
Yes, Mary Adebayo, our camera person. You know, the incident that took place on the first day, day one. She was affected. She was among the victims that were shot with the tear gas canister at the secretariat. The secretariat close to the Eagle Square, while the police were trying to resist protesters from going into the Eagle Square. She was shot. Her reporter, Joshua Emara, escaped the shot, but she's currently receiving treatment at home. She's doing well right now as I speak.
All right, thank you very much on that. Now, do explain to us what's happening right now at the grounds where you are covering from.
At Moshood Abiola Stadium, National Stadium. Yeah. The protesters have reconvened. Unlike earlier reported that the place was deserted, but they are now fully back and they actually said they are going to continue the protest.
To the president
Okay, we heard a young gentleman giving a speech there regarding the demands for the protest. Are there any engagements apart from the police, from any other authorities there in Abuja? Yesterday, we remember that they were walking from the stadium to other parts of Abuja, and that didn't go down too well. Are there any attempts to do the same thing today?
Yes, the speeches you are hearing from the protesters is actually in reaction of what happened yesterday. You will see the headlines this morning that one person was killed, according to newspapers reports. You know, we reported the shootout yesterday in our live broadcast. You know, the reaction you're hearing now is the reaction of the live ammunition experience, the live shooting they experienced yesterday that led to the killing of at least one person recorded so far. That's the content of what they are saying this morning. And so they are actually enraged by that act by the police, and they promise they're going to, you know, face the police today. But we just hope that the protest is going to be peaceful today, because of course they took their time before they come out, because they are actually strategizing to make sure that everyone is safe.
You said they took their time to come out. What is the attendance like today compared to yesterday and all the fracas that they faced just to protest?
So today people are just coming out. You know, the shootout yesterday was very, you know, threatening, life-threatening. So you don't expect them to just come out like that. So it's too early to actually compare today's attendance to that of yesterday, considering the fact that the protesters are yet to recover from the live ammunition experience they got yesterday that led to the killing of that one person.
Right. Emmanuel, I have to ask, what about the security personnel there? What is it like? Is it the same number? Are they being secured, protected? You know, talk to me about, you know, if there's a way you can do a 360 with a camera, please. If there's any chance you can speak to the cameraman to do a pan 360 so we can just see around where you're standing at.
I didn't get your question clearly, but I just want to, I still believe you're speaking about the number of protesters that came out. It's busy right now. Protesters are actually, you know, looking for a shelter, you know, take refuge. But all I can say right now is that we have new faces that we have not seen from day one and day two. We have seen a reinforcement today of the protesters, new set of persons. You can see the person speaking right now. The person speaking right now is coming in. They are all coming in from the north, coming in from the northern part of the country, Katsina, Zamfara, and then of course Sokoto and Kaduna. So they are saying that they are not coming into town. I want to join the protest. So these are a set of Hausa-speaking protesters that have come in to join the protest. So it's a new set of protesters that are coming in today. Yeah.
And now, Emmanuel, you say they're coming in from Jos and the northern part of the country. Why aren't they protesting in these parts? Why do they have to come down to the capital to protest?
Yes. You know, I initially mentioned that most of the content of the protest is the demands of the protesters actually has to do with insecurity issues. So most of these guys we are seeing are displaced persons. They are displaced, and they are coming in to air their view that the government must take charge in terms of security that have affected their states. Most of them were sent out of their states. Most of them were sent out by bandits, by insecurity. Most of their families were killed, their houses were burned. So if you listen to the content of this speech, they are talking about how insecurity have taken them away from their state, Sokoto, Katsina, Zamfara, of course Plateau, neighboring Nasarawa states, and all that. So that's the reason why they didn't stay in their states to protest. They rather come to the FCT, where they feel is the seat of the presidency, the commercial capital, to, you know, air their view to the federal government directly. Since the state government couldn't help them, they believe that with the power of the federal government, they will be safe.
All right. Emmanuel, I want to say a very big thank you. We'll definitely come back to you as the day unfolds to get more update from you. But again, we appreciate you for doing this with us, and well done. You're watching the hashtag #EndBadGovernance protests coverage right here on News Central TV. Day 3 of the protests. We're going to a short break. There's more after the break. Stay with us. And welcome back. It's time for us to continue. Of course, let's continue our in-depth look at the hashtag End Bad Governance protest sweeping across Nigeria. And of course, what started as a peaceful call for change has unfortunately seen some isolated reports of violence, with reports of unrest in states like Kano, Kaduna, Yobe, and other parts of the country. Some bloodshed, some looting, and rage has left many Nigerians concerned about the safety and future of our nation.
Now, so to help us understand the complexities of these events and also the implications of the End Bad Governance movement, we're joined by Confidence McCarry, senior analyst at SBM Intelligence. Confidence, thank you very much for coming through.
Thank you so much.
So,
completely jealous of your glasses, by the way.
We got some information from SBM only just yesterday regarding some very interesting happenings that happened during the End Bad Governance protests in other parts of the country. It was a graph, it was a sheet, and I think we're going to put that up very soon so that you can see these spots where we had cases of violence occur. Now, is there a way we could determine exactly why this or these occurred, and specifically why they occurred in these locations of the country? Mostly we see most of them actually in the north, but very little occurrence of the sort in Lagos and places like Abuja and where else now? So what gives?
All right, so the first thing you should understand is if you take a look at the spread of hunger and poverty in Nigeria, for every metric that SBM releases, the Nigerian Bureau of Statistics release, the World Bank, and the rest of them, you see most of the poverty being entrenched in the north. And as a result of that, you tend to find the desperation, and agitation a lot more concentrated in that part. And if you also look at the insecurity and things that usually affect cost of living and the likes of them, they are heavily concentrated in the north. That does not mean that the south is not really suffering from these things, but if you do a north-south comparison, you find these things much more endemic in the north. And there seems to be a little bit of a background to this. So for instance, if I remember correctly, the first incident of violence we had, or the most profound on Thursday, which was the first day of the protest, was in Kano, where there was some looting, and then they took the violence up to the government house, and the state governor was forced to declare curfew. There's this historical bent to it. Things really get bad whenever protests hit Kano, and this has been going on for at least the history of modern Nigeria. The first set of violent protests we had in what is now known as northern Nigeria was in Kano in 1953. So if you check every major protest in Nigeria's history from 1953 till date, there is a chance that when it gets to Kano, things become a dynamite. If you check the Metatine riots, also in Kano, it was dominant. You check all of them down to the current era. You tend to find this thing where there seems to be a keg of dynamite there. And if you now bring it down to the south, you find that the police or whoever is in charge, security agencies that have been sent to quell the protests, are a lot more tame in the north compared to the south, because they understand the psychology behind it, that any bit of action that seems overboard or heavy-handed is going to ignite.
Can you explain that again? In the south here, it's a bit more tame, but in the north, they might not be as tame. So are you saying that that's what agitates?
Yes, that's what agitates. But in this particular context, it might not necessarily be as a result of heavy-handedness by security officials as much as how much the bad governance in quotes tends to hit people in the north compared to the south.
But this time it's different, because in the past, if you want to go back with history and regarding the history of protests, especially in Kano, there's always an opposition whom a certain group of people are fighting against, who are often perhaps present inside the same location. But in this case, I don't want to say an invisible, and I don't want to use the word enemy, but maybe as I go on, I'll look for the best word. But it's a protest that's supposed to help end the suffering that they're going through. So why did it turn out that it's like they turned against the system and are looting instead?
Yeah, when it comes to things like protests against hunger, protests against hardship, when people are desperate, there is only so much that you can do to kill them. You understand? So like I was trying to say earlier, that in the north, these things is a lot more desperate. And I think one of the reasons, I'm just suggesting that one of the reasons why we could see this kind of, the situation of things in Kano is because I think that they had that, should I say, political cover from the state governor who, as of the time when the protest started, was the only political figure across the country of such high repute or such standing, would say to say, okay, no problem, you can go ahead with the protest and we're going to back you. So they had that political cover, but one of the reasons why things went all right is because in the first place, you look at the crowd control mechanisms the Nigerian security forces have. Beyond the use of tear gas, they do not have any other capacity to repel protesters. I mean, since I've been monitoring protests in Nigeria, I think from the Occupy Nigeria protest in 2012 to date, I think the only other tool that the Nigerian police has had in their arsenal to curb protests or manage riots have been water cannons. Apart from that, tear gas is the most prominent. And if you look at how Kano is, for instance, I'm using Kano as an arrowhead now because it's the biggest city in the north. It's a big city. And its population only comes second to Lagos in terms of Nigeria's demographic spread. So the Nigerian police has not really shown capacity in managing these things. And apart from in the south, for instance, or in Abuja, where people want to protest, they go to Eagle Square to protest. In Abuja, in the south, for instance, in Lagos, if people want to protest, there's a tendency that they will either square off at Freedom Park in Ojota, or they meet at TBS on the island. But in Kano, it is not so. You don't have one particular place in Kano where you could point to say, this is where protests are going to gather and then we are going to manage them. They are dispersed. One of the reasons why I refer back to modern Nigeria in terms of Kano's history is something profound happened in 1966 pogroms when Kano rioters came out and then they were looking for Igbo people to kill after the January coup. The military government at the time, who instituted a state of emergency, could not handle it. How they were able to put down the protest is that the military governors then, I think it was Major Hassan Katsina, he called the then emir of Kano, Ado Bayero, he enlisted his help. So two of them rode across the city, street by street. So it was when these people saw the emir of Kano riding to them and then appealing to them, they got ashamed and then they put down their weapons and then they went home. But if you do a trace between then and now, from 1969, you see that that particular institution of traditional rulership or the monarchy system in Nigeria has been badly degraded. First of all, the bandits have bastardized the position because of how they abduct and kill so many of them. And then politically in Nigeria, it's so charged that people do not really respect them because of their, the way they support the current system and the likes of that. So right now in 2024, if you're calling the emir of Kano to come out and create protests, people are not going to listen to you because things are not as bad, or things were not as bad in 1966 as they were in 2024. So a lot of things have happened. So we do not really have a handle to it anymore. So if you have this kind of protest, especially where people are this hungry, things are likely to get hit and go really bad.
Especially when people are this hungry. I'm so glad you said that. We had Mr. Omoyele Sowore, who's one of the known faces of this protest, and he pointed fingers to the government and also the security agencies as them being responsible for the looting that we've seen, and also the number of agitation and cases that we've seen for intimidation by the security forces. Do you think that the intimidation and also the very heavy presence of security forces in the major cities across the nation where the protest is going has hampered on the success or the momentum of this protest?
Yeah, I think if you draw your mind back to what happened during the NSAS protest in 2020, there is actually a chance that what Sowore is saying is true, because there are videos on Twitter at the moment, still from 2020, where it showed that, I think in Abuja, where government vehicles, SUVs, were shown to transport government-allied thugs to disrupt the protest in Abuja. We also had similar things in Lagos. I'm not really sure about that. So it's the use of non-state actors, especially what they call thugs, hoodlums, and agberos and the likes, have been some kind of a way for the government to have a handle of the protest, even if it seems detrimental to public safety and national security. So in so many ways, what if I do think that that's the same thing that's happening now, I would say that the government is trying to use the same tactic so as to declare some sort of a state of emergency to get the people back inside their houses. But one thing I would always say is this. While you would see in a country like, say, Russia, where people come out for pro-Navalny protesters, for pro-Navalny protests, and then the state will arrest thousands of them and then house them in a particular place, process them, and then keep them in detention. Nigeria does not have that capacity.
And why is that? Because you also talked about, them not having proper riot gears as well. Years after into protesting, they're still using very heavy-handed approach to quell protesters or to de-escalate issues. Why is that? Why are we not, in spite of all the funding, and that is pretty much one of the responsibilities of the police force?
Yeah, the average psychological thinking of the Nigerian government is to respond to every crisis with the use of maximum force. So the Nigerian government always tries to project force when it doesn't really have the capacity to back it up after a few days or so. And one of the glaring shortfalls of the use of force is, for instance, we saw during lockdown where the government said there is a state of emergency, we are locking the country down, everybody stay in your house and everything. We saw that lockdown was only successful in very, very particular states like Lagos and some other urban areas. In large parts of the country, there was no lockdown. People were moving about freely. The Nigerian government has not improved this capacity to detain people, to process them and to facilitate their release using the justice system. So what it just does is, if you check many of the human rights abuses reports that indict the Nigerian police force, it tends to say that it shoots many of the protesters because the current capacity of the Nigerian prison service cannot handle that much amount. So what you simply have is this: if they have used riot gears like the one they have, the tear gas, water cannon is not working, the next thing they resort to is the use of live bullets, as we saw during NSAS protests and the rest of it. So I wouldn't really be shocked if these current protests go in the same manner. And it's classic Nigerian government response. So whatever they do not really seem to have a handle of through the use of negotiations, political bargaining and the rest, the next thing, even at the first instance, is to use force.
Let's talk about the address by the Chief of Defense Staff from yesterday, General Christopher Musa. He addressed the media and he told about the fact that the military is on standby. In a country where we've had many cases of uprisings or protests and stuff like that, with no real riot policing, however, the inclusion of the army instead of an instance like this, how good or bad can that get?
Yeah, it's definitely will get bad.
Why is it bad once it's the army?
Yeah, because...
And are the police doing okay as it is currently?
Well, in terms of what the police is doing, I would think that it depends on where they are. So, for instance, in parts of Lagos, Jota, for instance, I saw this video yesterday where they were supposed to move against the protesters, but they stopped short of doing that because the protesters spoke to them and the like, so they had to step back and everything.
So
but
they're reasonable?
They're reasonable.
Now, in
the
case of the army now, infusing the army inside of this kind of a situation, how good or bad is that?
The average soldier would tell you that I'm a trained killer. I am only trained to shoot, to kill, not to negotiate with you. This is not something that I'm saying hypothetically. This is something I've listened to senior army officers tell me personally, that when they were justifying the use of live bullets during NSAS to call the protests at Lekki, they told me personally that I am not there to negotiate. If I am called upon, my responsibility is to shoot. And it's problematic because in the first place, you do not really have to call the army to quell civil unrest, especially when the people who are carrying out the protests have been largely peaceful. So the use of the army to quell civil unrest is a function of a very, very dysfunctional state. And it is a very, very bad habit that Nigeria has been unable to break free from. The first time the army was introduced into civil unrest was during the TV riots of the early 1960s. The government of Tafawa Balewa introduced them, and then they quelled the protests within a year. And one of the profound things that happened was that one of the people who led the end to quell the protests, or the movement to quell the protests, Major Tim Onwategu, was one of the people who led the coup in January 1966. So it's not like as if the army is really, really happy doing this job, you understand? But at least at the top leadership echelon, this is something that they have been used to. So they have no problems doing it. But one of the things I need to state for emphasis is that the frequent use of the army to quell civil unrest, number one, it erases their invincibility, it reduces the respect that the people have for them, and then it's a bellwether to tell you that whatever democratic pretenses that Nigeria pretends to have as a state, it is actually just a smokescreen for something really, really bad.
All right, we've been just alerted to what's happening inside of Abuja. I'm not exactly sure what these visuals are, but we can see tear gas being deployed against what might be the protesters in Abuja. I think that's a very familiar path there coming from the stadium, if I'm not mistaken. So I'm wondering exactly what these are. We're going to wait for detailed reports from our correspondent, Emmanuel Bagudu, in just a minute. Hopefully he'll be able to give us an in-depth explanation as to exactly what this is about here.
Yeah, but
these are visuals from Abuja. Once again, we are yet to get information about exactly what the situation is.
Yeah, but as you can see, there are many vehicles, security agencies with their pickup trucks as well, with tear gassing there. You can see the gas, the canisters of gas coming out, just so you know, fueling the grounds there. We cannot see any protesters there. I'm sure they have been dispersed. We cannot see any protesters at this time. We understand that Emmanuel Bagudu is there, who can hear me. Emmanuel, if you can hear me, what's the situation? Can you let us know what's happening?
In front of Bashir Abiola, this is a stadium. We just found our way into the security post. I am my camera person. and then we managed to just escape. It's surprising to see that the police come to around here, despite the fact that this is the venue. Yeah.
What exactly is the reason
yeah.
for the deployment of the tear gas? Why are they deploying tear gas?
No one knew the reason. Yeah, no one knew the reason. We are just doing our normal business, just like yesterday and the day before yesterday. And then all of a sudden, the police appear from nowhere on open fire on protesters and journalists and everyone.
Emmanuel, I want to make this very clear. I just want, for sake of our viewers, you are in the security post inside the National Stadium, the Moshood Abiola National Stadium, which is the designated point for assembly for the protest, correct?
Yes.
And they drove in there.
Privileged, and some few journalists are privileged to even get access to the security post.
And they
because,
drove
and there were many people who would hamper for safety.
And they drove in there and tear gassed the protesters inside the designated point where they were supposed to be assembled.
Yes, the protesters are actually in front of the stadium gate, and then of course the police came in. We were shooting from the gate. That was why we had the privilege of going into the security post. Yeah, so but the remaining ones that didn't have the privilege of going into the security post actually got dispersed and they find their way.
So where did they get dispersed?
So you're very right to say that actually they came to pour tear gas at the designated place that where the protest is meant to happen.
Do you have any idea what their intention was? Was it to move the protesters to a different location? What exactly could be their intention?
Well, what I can say is that their intention is just to stop the protests entirely.
Okay.
Because they are coming at the designated venue for the protest. Unlike yesterday when we said that if you go out of the stadium, you are wrong. But the protesters are not wrong. Nobody's wrong. They are at the stadium. Why pouring tear gas on us? You know, that's why the problem is.
Emmanuel, we need the cameraman, if he can hear us, to zoom in or zoom out so we can see the environs at this time. There we go. I think we have a clearer view there. If you can just reduce the exposure
the
for
camera
us.
person is just struggling. He's also struggling for a breath. Yeah.
All right, we'll establish visuals with you when you guys are safe and good. Please make sure stay safe. Use wet rags on your face and your nostril. Make sure to get face masks as much as you can, and we'll talk to you soon. But Emmanuel, well done, and I'm so sorry for what you're facing there, but well done. Confidence, very interesting that this is happening just as we're having this conversation about excessive use of force by the security agencies to quell. Now, in this case, when we were speaking to Emmanuel for the very first time, it seemed peaceful. They were just on their megaphones talking to other protesters. Nothing seemed to be happening, and they were inside the designated spot for the protest. And now this. What are we getting wrong?
Yeah, it's not a matter of what we are getting wrong as much as a function of what the government intends to do. So with this, it shows that the government does not intend to listen to the protesters. Secondly, it shows that the security agencies have taken a side. When I was talking about the use of the military in the last instance to quell the protest, it's a function of what the Chief of Defense Staff says. It's a function of state capture, especially in third world states like Nigeria. In how a democracy is supposed to function, the security services are supposed to be loyal to the people. What we're seeing in Nigeria right now is the head of the defense forces and the police as an institution are taking the side of the president. So loyalty to the head of state or loyalty to the commander-in-chief or loyalty to whoever the head of the state is more of a description of how a dysfunctional society is. So, but for this particular incident that's currently happening in Abuja, one of the things it tells you profoundly is that for the police to move in like this, of course, they're not moving in on their own. It's just to tell you, it's just to show you that if government, first of all, does not have the interest to listen to whatever the protests have to say, and then its own protest management strategy is to scatter the people as much as it can. And I do think that this thing is going to kill people, especially people with breathing issues. So it's only for us to just hope and pray that it doesn't get worse than what we're currently seeing at the moment.
Mr. McGarry, I want to say thank you very much for bringing us
me.
your insightful view of the instances in Nigeria regarding the protest.
And what you see there is day 3 of the hashtag End Bad Governance so far. The scenes we showed you earlier was from Abuja there, where Emmanuel Bagudu and our camera personnel, they were tear gassed alongside other members of the press plus protesters inside of the designated point for protests in Abuja, and that is the Moshood Abiola Stadium. Now we're going to, continue with that coverage later on today when they're able to find a safe spot and be able to speak to other protesters that were tear gassed and find out why the security agency did what they did. But we've been here with you from 8 a.m. down to this hour. I'm kicking off today, giving you blow-by-blow accounts of the live coverage of the hashtag End Bad Governance today. We also spoke with Omoyele Sowore along with Barrister Sam Kagbo, and also one of the faces of the protest at Ojota, Lagos, and that's Hassan Taiwo Soweto, plus none other than Akin Olaoye, also known as Aki Tollgate on social media, that's Twitter. And we've been talking about every side, in-depth analysis just right here for you at News Central TV.
Interesting contributions from everybody that has joined us today. I want to say thank you to everybody, and also that you should stick right here because we've got more coverage coming your way. Dakwa Adeboye and Adebola Adeduba will be joining very soon. Well, not joining, we're leaving.
Yeah, we're leaving, and we're passing the baton up to them.
Of Breakfast Extra.
Yes.
So let's exit the stage for them to come in.
Absolutely. So we're passing the baton on to them to continue with the coverage. So keep it here on us and make sure to follow us on social media. We're at News Central TV. We're streaming live on Facebook, YouTube, as well as X. So you can find us everywhere else. If you see anything or hear anything, make sure to send us your eyewitness report, and you can always send it to us on social media as well.
Join us again tomorrow morning.
There we go.
8 a.m. for more Breakfast Extra. Bye-bye, everybody.